focus on just banning features such as infinite scrolling. Emily Darlington is a Labour member of the Science...
being looked after in hospital.
We need to make sure that when people carry out these activities, they feel the full force of the law. People think they can get away with this. The person who firebombed a few weeks ago is out on bail. That's not full force of the law.
This crisis, it's a crisis for all of us. It's not enough to simply say we stand with Jewish communities. Of course we do, but we must show it and act it. And the responsibility lies with each and every one of us, because it is our fight too.
Let's stop importing people from countries where anti-Semitism is the norm. And if our London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, in his infinite wisdom and belief in diversity, thinks that's the sort of diverse view that it's OK to have on the streets of London and the police don't get involved, don't be shocked, and don't you bloody dare claim to be shocked or upset or care about Jewish people being stabbed on the streets of our capital city in broad daylight. This is on you.
You keep getting proven right every single time. Jews are not safe in this country.
Well, absolutely. No one can be surprised or feeling shocked that this happened. No Jew certainly is. I mean, we had Zach Polanski last week saying this was just a perceived threat. Well, we can see this isn't any perception. This is real. This is happening on the streets. This isn't just an anti-Semitic terror attack. This is an attack on Britain, on the Western liberal democracy and values.
The first politician that uses the word shocking, I might just go and throttle him, because this is anything but shocking. It's the most expected thing is almost overdue, if you ask me. Because, I mean, I just left Israel last week. I thought it'd be the last time we were woken up by explosions, but clearly not.
The Jewish community is our community, and their safety is our safety. And we have to make it absolutely clear, robust, strong leadership, and this has to stop, because otherwise it's going to be... It's almost being normalised, and it's terrifying, and we're sick of it. Enough's enough.
Our plan is a complete step change in how we protect communities, moving beyond piecemeal responses to a sustained nationwide effort, one that ensures that people across the United Kingdom can live freely
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hey, very good morning to you, my friends. It's Monday morning. We're live across the UK with Talk, of course, the home of common sense, a phrase that everybody wants to suddenly start using. Let's talk common sense. Let's look at this from a common sense point of view. We've been saying it for blimmin' years. And it is, of course, the home of you, the alarm clock, Brit, those good people of this country who get up all hours and go to work and pay your taxes and get disrespected by politicians who go, those people don't matter, well, they matter to us. And your views on the news of the day, all important. 0344, listen, 0344 499 1000 as ever. There's no prize, just the honour of being the first voice note on a Monday, the beginning of another week. My second week without a holiday. Talking of which, where's Christian? Buggered off on holiday, ladies and gentlemen. Thoroughly deserved, but we're feeling slightly out of kilter. But we got ourselves, and they said to me, listen, trust this man. This man is the future. Dean. How can I describe Dean? He looks like he failed in an audition for The Only Way is Essex or Towie. I mean, he's come back from Portugal. He's been on a boys' bender. That didn't sound right. And he's full of beans. He's very on the button. So I would suspect and suggest that if you leave a voice note today, 0344 499 1000, please start in the following way. Dino! Oh, dear God. Dino at the beginning of your voice notes. The others, the best team are here. Big Mark, Neha and Tommy on the phones. You can send your text 87222. Start your message with the word talk. Monday morning across the UK. What's happening, dear peeps? I will obviously tell you that there is more tension in the Middle East. Israel has launched a fresh assault overnight on Iran in retaliation for Tehran firing ballistic missiles on Sunday night. We will keep you updated. That ceasefire seemingly under pressure, Trump jumping up and down, and we'll speak to Sean Bell, the best military analyst between now and 10 o'clock. Back home, though, talking defence, front page of the Mail says it all, in my humble opinion. Former NATO chief has issued a stark warning to Keir Starmer. Spend more on defence or Britain could end up paying in blood. How is it, right, that for years and years, nobody, and I include the Tories in this, thought it was a good idea to spend money on defence? It was easy, wasn't it? They've all come out at the weekend going, well, I mean, the thing is, we need to cut the welfare benefit bill and spend more on defence. You should have thought about that. It's a disgrace. Great Britain, no Navy, no Army, no Air Force, laughed at. The other big story of the weekend, David Lammy, the most incompetent politician since God created incompetent politicians, in a wide-ranging Sky interview with the brilliant Trevor Phillips, who's my new hero, was asked what was wrong with J.D. Vance having his say on the Henry Novak horrific death. So much in the news about this last week. And he said, well, it's nothing to do with the Americans. The Americans should keep out. It's got to bugger them. What do you mean? And he said, well, hold on a minute, mate. 6 years ago, the entire world got involved. You spoke, Starmer spoke, you all took the knee. There was a minute's silence in the House of Commons for George Floyd. Listen, the way George Floyd died was appalling, but he wasn't the best human being. Henry Novak, have we seen a minute's silence? Have we? Nobody, honestly, it's the most hypocritical thing in the history of the world. And he sits there, our Deputy Prime Minister, saying, at the end of the day, the Vice President and I have agreed to disagree. No, because you're wrong, Lammy. Patently wrong. 0344 499 1000. My favourite story of the day, a union boss. You know those people that apparently hate reform and they're all for Labour? A union boss, Mr Smith, has blasted Labour's net zero agenda, warning its driving members to reform. He says that reform is more popular now amongst his union. He also criticised Ed Miliband's stance on North Sea oil as economic madness. That, by the way, on the back of a latest opinion poll over the weekend that says Reform has extended its lead over Labour to 9 points ahead of that crucial by-election, which we'll tell you about a bit later. So much to talk about, and the front of the Express just about nails it as well. Dangerous criminals thrown out of EU nations are crossing the Channel because they know that under this government, this country won't send them back. So there you are, people. We've got an incompetent Deputy Prime Minister. We've got no bloody armed forces. Criminals are coming in so they don't get sent back. And a union boss has finally admitted what we've known for years. Net stupid zero is destroying this country and reform are on the march. That's my start to Monday. How's it going, Dino? All right? He says he's all good. That's not what his ex-girlfriend said. 0344 499 1000. We say a very good morning to a man who manages to dress spectacularly classily, even at this time in the morning. He's Talk's equivalent of Val Doonigan. Peter Blexley, good morning.
Good morning.
Do you remember Val Doonigan with his cardigans?
A wide array of jumpers, yeah.
You're looking smart, so what's with the pink? Is it?
Thank you very much. No, I just thought that it's summer, isn't it? It's supposed to be.
There's a spring in your step. You look like Poirot.
Well,
something like that, do you know?
I think I'm a rather more competent detective, or I was, than Poirot. But anyway, he's pretending I'm real.
I'm real.
But it's the source of real joy this morning.
Yes.
Because young Dean, who you've alluded to, sitting in the chair this morning, is, of course, a fellow Queen's Park Rangers supporter. So this morning, on your show, you're outnumbered. West Ham are outnumbered by QPR, and that makes me smile.
Can I just say I didn't realise that about him, which puts me in a slightly embarrassing position, but I will pay for the three of us to go to whatever match, QPR West Ham. I'll get you in a box. We'll have a good time. Do you mind going in a box? You don't want to stand with all those people, do you?
I'm a man of the people, so going in a box is... It depends where it is.
Do you see this man of the people crap? Of course he'll go in a box. He'll pretend to be a man of the people.
Let me finish. If it's at West Ham, no, I can't go in a box because when we score our second and our third, I will be so ecstatically happy. And, of course, it'll put a lot of people's noses out of joint. I've done that in a box malarkey before, and it hasn't necessarily...
I'm only joking.
Well.
I'll come and stand with the people. Right, 6:10, get your calls in, get to the voice note. Starting with Dino, 0344 499 1000. Where do you want to start, PB?
Oh, spend now on defence or we will pay a cost in blood, says the Daily Mail. And this comes from a man who I think might know a thing or two about aeroplanes and aircraft carriers and bombs and bullets and all that kind of stuff. He's a former chief of NATO, General Sir Richard Shirriff. So I reckon he knows quite a thing about armed forces.
Yeah.
Now, of course, Labour should have delivered this military spending plan last autumn.
Yeah.
OK? They're now giving it out in dribs and drabs. And quite frankly, it shows that this country is not capable of defending itself properly. Of course, the Tories take a huge amount of blame for this underfunding of our military. But here's an expression that politicians used to say back in the day. Do you remember when they used to say they fixed the roof while the sun was shining?
Yes.
And that's what you should do.
Yes.
So when the country's in a reasonable economic state, that's the opportunity you take to do things like defence. But of course, all these flaky, fluffy, liberal, woke, progressive nonsense politicians of the last couple of decades have thought, oh, the world's safe. We don't need to spend money on defence. Let's give it out on welfare. Let's have a net zero lunatic policy and all that kind of drivel. Whereas really, what every government should do at all times is ensure that your armed services are suitably funded. And the fact that ours are not is a deep stain on this nation, and the blame lays squarely with politicians of all persuasions.
I couldn't agree more. Have you got that clip? This is Claire Coutinho, the Energy Secretary from the Tory party, over the weekend saying, basically, you need to cut welfare to increase areas like defence. Have a listen.
What they're looking for is £6 billion by the end of this Parliament. Some of the other things that they said they're going to cut to fund that is transport projects, key infrastructure projects. And actually, instead of that, I think you should go to the welfare bill. To your point, the working age welfare bill is going up by £40 billion between now and the end of the Parliament. And that is not only completely unsustainable, but also, I think, a much better source of funds than transport, which brings growth and connectivity to our communities. So, yes, I do think we need to get on top of the welfare bill, and if not, you will see some of these crucial areas be squeezed in order to fund what is undeniably a priority now, defence spending.
Now, I like Claire Coutinho, and I completely agree that we need to cut defence spending, Pete, but that's an absolutely ridiculous thing from a Tory politician who was part of a party for 14 years that cut defence, as you said, like they were just taking sweets away from kids. It was the easy cut whilst the world believed everything was fine. And you know what? I'm going to sound old-fashioned and wrong and all that. But I thought that if you're an island, you would defend yourself. As you quite rightly said, surely a government's priority is to defend its people first and foremost. We are utterly, we're neutered. We are not in a position of safety. And this government, this bloody government, has been promising for 2 years, as you said, and they have done jack about the whole thing.
Forgive me just correcting you, and I know it was a slip of the tongue. You said cut defence spending. What you meant was increase defence spending.
Yes, sorry, I did. That's why I'm useless at this job, and you're far better. Yes.
Of course we need to increase defence spending. And I've had the great pleasure in my life of knowing many military personnel.
Yeah.
And without question of a doubt, they are the very best of us. They sign up on that dotted line, and what they know is they may sacrifice their lives in the defence of our nation. And that's the defence of everybody, of every race, every colour, every creed, every religion. Some people of whom would absolutely detest the military personnel, but they sign up and they are willing to sacrifice their lives for us. Not only are they heroic beyond compare, they are brilliant. Whether you be that soldier that joins up, the training they go through, the discipline that is instilled upon them, the skills that they have, the talents that they have, and then everybody else within such a wide range of jobs, skills and talent. I doff my cap. I adore them. We need to give them the kit they need to keep us safe.
Couldn't agree more. 6:15. What do you make of what Pete just said and what I just said? Front page of the Mail. Spend now on defence or we will pay a cost in blood. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. Let's talk about Lammy. Have you got that clip yet? Yes or no? Not yet. What's happening? Christian would have had it done by now. What's going on here? Jeez, man. What this is, Dean. This is the new stuff. Right. At the weekend, David Lammy, and I am not his biggest fan, and I don't make any apologies for this, David Lammy appeared with the excellent Trevor Phillips on Sky and basically revealed that he'd phoned the American Vice President J.D. Vance to tell him he was wrong to blame Henry Novak's death on the mass invasion of migrants. And actually, he said, I told the Deputy Prime Minister, Deputy Vice President, you shouldn't be involved in this. This has nothing to do with you. Keep your nose out, which is a bit bloody rich when you look back. And this is what the clip will show eventually when Dean works out how to record it. 6 years ago, and I was saying this last week to anybody and everybody, 6 years ago, I didn't like George Floyd as a human being, but found it abhorrent the way he was killed, and I'm absolutely delighted that those coppers in America went to jail. But here's the thing, the whole world recoiled in horror. Quite rightly, some would say. Everybody took the knee. Footballers, actors, politicians. There was a minute's silence in the House of Commons and a minute's silence in the House of Lords. And the only politician last week brave enough with the cojones to stand up and say, I feel as many will do rage, was Nigel Farage. He got absolutely slaughtered in the House of Commons, although I think the country understood massively what he was saying. And while we're at it, by the way, for all the critics, I am not condoning anything that went on in Southampton. That's your mob mentality that's rubbish. There were thousands of people there who believe absolutely that there is two-tier policing. And I will repeat to Lammy, which he refuses to accept, and Starmer, because he said it, I don't care if what I'm about to say goes down like a lead balloon. I believe if the roles had been reversed and the Sikh gentleman had been stabbed by Henry Novak, the whole country, politicians, certainly a lot of the mass media would have reacted differently, and that is why I will not leave this going. And JD Vance has as much right to an opinion about the disastrous two-tier policing in this country as we have. Do you not agree with that?
If a white person had stabbed a black person multiple times, and if the police had turned up and automatically assumed that that black person was a wrongdoer, and they handcuffed said black person, as they said, repeatedly, I've been stabbed and I can't breathe, if that hypothetical situation had arisen, Britain would have been burning this weekend. Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. There would have been huge riots. I'm very glad there hasn't been.
Of course, we all are.
I never want riots of any description. But just to get to your point about Lammy and JD Vance, OK, Vikram Digwa, right, is a Brit, OK?
Yep.
So he is not an immigrant into this country. However, the point that JD Vance is making, after the trial has concluded, after the verdicts have been delivered, and after the sentence has been handed down, OK, so JD Vance showing a whole heap more discipline and knowledge of the law than, say, Hampshire Constabulary.
Well, we'll talk about that in a second. Can I just make this point before you go on? When Starmer and when Lammy and when all of them, including Sadiq Khan, jumped in on George Floyd 6 years ago, it was before the trial.
That's exactly the point I was going to make. So
Before.
It was irresponsible, and where we have Starmer, Lammy and co all saying, oh, outrage, outrage, JD Vance, Pete Hegseth, interfering in British political matters. What did they do when they took the knee? The lot of them? All of them? That's exactly what they were doing, was interfering in American politics. The hypocrisy is staggering.
Let me just play this clip. Have you got it? This is Lammy, skewered by the excellent Trevor Phillips on Sky. Have a watch, have a listen.
Why is it OK for Starmer, and by the way, your colleagues, Shabana Mahmood, Sadiq Khan, all to express views about a death in an American city, even before the trial took place, by the way, whilst JD Vance, you get ticked off by you for commenting on a very similar tragedy here in the UK?
Couple of things. Overwhelmingly, the response to George Floyd was horror right across the globe. I remember we were all at home during the pandemic. It was horror.
But that's not the question I'm asking.
No, I'm explaining the context. That's the first context. The second context, of course, is that we are in government. The JD Vance is in government. When you're on the backbenches or in opposition, you're free, frankly, to reflect on anything. But I think there is a distinction.
No, it's okay for the opposition to be irresponsible.
No case is exactly the same.
I'm really sorry, and it's not personal. He is completely ruddy incompetent. He said there was horror around the globe. Well, why wasn't there horror around this country about Henry Novak? I was doing this story on Tuesday morning, Pete, before the mainstream media, 12 hours before they picked it up. And when it was on the front page of every newspaper on Wednesday, they did the same. He is saying also, in opposition, it's easier to complain about things. Rubbish, complete hypocrisy, and you're right. Legally, the case hadn't even finished when they all jumped in and took the knee. There's pictures of everybody. I had Farage on the phone that said I wouldn't take the knee for anybody. I'd bow my head.
Yeah,
Unbelievable hypocrisy, man.
Yeah, if you're going to have a barbecue this summer, and let's hope there is some nice weather coming our way, when you've got skewered chicken on it, you need to turn it every few minutes. Trevor Phillips really should have turned Lammy because he was that badly skewered.
You also brought something up. You need to find this for me, Jenna. This is actually my fault. I should have pointed this out. There's a really good text this morning which points out the Hampshire police chiefs. There was a story that came out on Saturday who tried to interfere in the murder trial of the murder of Henry Novak. Is this a clear case, Pete, of perverting the course of justice? Two-tier justice as well as two-tier policing. Have you heard about this story?
Oh, all across it yesterday. Absolutely astonishing. On two factors, if I may. Firstly, 3 days after Henry Novak's dreadful murder, Hampshire police were trying to spin a line that he was the aggressor. The family said, stop, this is untrue, do not release that. Hampshire police were forced into having a rethink about it. They were going to push out a false narrative. That's what they wanted to do because of their DEI obsession that, of course, white man must be bad, brown-faced man must be good. That's what they tried to do. But then the other revelation this week, and this is this weekend, and this is the truly, truly staggering part, is that whilst the trial was ongoing, Hampshire police wanted to counter what they regarded as disinformation being spread on social media by releasing a public statement whilst the trial was ongoing. So that clearly demonstrates that senior police, senior staff, I suspect, within Hampshire Police, number one, know nothing about the law of contempt.
Yep.
Because, of course, that would more than likely be held in contempt of court.
Absolutely, as Michael says on his text this morning, completely agree.
And secondly, that they know nothing about court proceedings, probably because those senior police officers have spent very, very little time in courts because they haven't nicked people, they haven't given evidence.
And also, if you're a layman and not like a pro like you are, you'd look at that and you'd go, so they want to release a statement because there's stuff coming out online during the Novak trial. Yeah, legally that's completely a no-no, but I bet a lot of people will go, well, you knew what was coming, you knew you were going to be criticised and you were trying to get the first hit in. That's appalling. But Hampshire police come out of this stinking, as does this government, as does Lammy, as does all of those politicians last week that laughed at a man prepared to stand up and say, this is a case of two-tier policing. I have met hundreds of people this week and not one of them, Pete, has said to me, that's a bit unfair. They've all gone, fair play to Farage for having the balls to stand up and tell the truth.
But let me just finish on Hampshire Police. It displays stupidity, absolute rank stupidity of the highest order. And you know what? In relation to Mr Farage, I felt rage about the death of Henry Novak, and I still do. I feel rage.
Did that, then
about
let me
how
ask
he
you a
was dealt
question.
with.
I felt rage too, and I thought the word was perfect. But did that make you want to take to the streets in Southampton and set fire to somebody's car?
Of course not.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so what is that as an accusation?
Yeah.
That is politicians. They will not accept that there is this system in this country, and there is. Listen, it's 6:23 and Dean's really upset. Christian's on holiday. You've not sent him one voice note. And this is, I mean, I know you don't like him. He's getting a real complex now. 87222 is the text message, but 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. It's 6:24. Peter Blexley and I back in a Minimo Jim Jam. Don't go anywhere.
we are going to remove all forms of DEI from policing. We will also, and we're the only, look, the Labour Party have not committed to this, the Tory Party have not committed to this. Reform are also taking the view that we would immediately ensure that nobody gets to carry deadly weapons on our streets unless you're a law enforcement. So I don't care what religion you are, I don't care how ceremonial, in quotes, your dagger is.
So you would
not get to
stop
carry.
the
There will be
Karapan?
no religious exemption.
Okay, so you would stop the Karapan being carried.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 6:26. Listen, also, just Peter Bexley is here. Just also from the weekend, on the back of this two-tier policing, there was an amazing article yesterday about Sir Malcolm Walker. You might be waking up and not wondering who he is. He's the founder of Iceland, and he basically laid into the police and said that there were many examples in his store about how false claims of racism were given more importance than shoplifting and violence. And when somebody like that, who hasn't got a political bone in his body, says it, it's another example of two-tier policing.
Astonishing scene that he painted yesterday in this article. So Mr. Walker says, black-faced man comes into one of his Iceland stores and starts removing the tops from milk bottles. Now, very, very disturbing behaviour. Let me tell you, I'm old enough to remember when a serving detective got locked up for decades because he was poisoning baby food.
I remember that.
And trying to hold people to ransom.
God, we're old, son.
We certainly are. So tampering with food, poisoning, blackmail, any kind of thing that are possibilities, very, very worrying behaviour. So, brown-faced store manager, employee of the store, witnesses this behaviour by black-faced man and confronts him. Face, absolutely doing thing.
Of course.
Black-faced man decides to make a phone call whereby he alleges that brown-faced man has been racist. Nino, Nino! The police go there headlong as quickly as they possibly can and arrive within 3 minutes to deal with what is quite obviously crime of the century. Not. It's a false allegation.
Completely.
But the police, before they establish the falseness of the allegation, guess what? Handcuff and detain brown-faced Asian man.
For people who don't agree, that's fine. Tell me why. But I have to say, and I will not give this up, there is two-tier policing in this country. And if Sir Malcolm Walker, the founder of Iceland, you're going to call him a liar as well. There are people who say, no, there isn't. Yes, there is. DEI, wokeness, whatever you want to call it, has infiltrated almost every part of the police. And they... Listen, I'm going to be really honest, Blexy, you might disagree with me. It's infected men and women serving on the front line. I get that. However, what happened with Henry Novak is, for me, the most revolting example of incompetence. You have to balance the two out with that story. Hey, guess what? Dino's finally worked out how to use the equipment. Although I'm slightly right. Roger in Hounslow, man of the common sense people. Dino, yay. That's his only friend. Morning, Rob.
Good morning, Jez. Good morning, Mr. Blexley. Awesome start, as always. Never mind Lammy being thick and incompetent. What about the police who are looking at the case of Mr. Novak, trying to interfere with a case? You want to see incompetence? Maybe they should be getting their P45 and maybe a little chat from the bench. Maybe they should be getting summoned or prosecuted for what they did, trying to pervert the course of justice.
Oh, good, he's finished. That's true. That does not sit well for Hampshire Police. Let me read this. The police force at the centre of the Novak case. This is a fact. Considered issuing a statement challenging disinformation during the trial of the 18-year-old student killer. It's understood Hampshire Police were concerned about online commentary and potential public unrest. and had sought the CPS's view on publishing a message saying it would address questions once legal proceedings concluded. I mean, total incompetence, and I think running around trying to make sure that they weren't judged, but of course they would judge because they were incompetent as others.
And, of course, the key line in that is during the trial. They were going to do this during the trial. Anyway,
You've seen and heard it all. Does it not blow your mind how incompetent Hampshire police are?
The level of stupidity is absolutely off the Richter scale. But, dear Henry, rest his soul, I think Henry Novak's name should go down in everlasting history as the moment the police woke up to the folly of their ways.
Woke up, I love that.
Yes,
yeah,
so
clever.
I hope they do. We shall have to wait and see. But it actually cuts across a much bigger question about policing. We've heard about all the incompetence and all the failings. Now, the bedrock of British policing for the last nearly 200 years has been that the police do their work by consent. They do it with the consent of the people.
Yeah.
And Peel used an expression to reinforce this: the police are the public and the public are the police. The police are taken from the public and given a warrant card. Therefore, they police with consent. I wonder now how many people would say, they don't police with my consent anymore because they show favour to particular groups as opposed to other groups.
Completely
they are not
agree.
policing without fear or favour. They are told to ensure that there are different outcomes for different groups, and that's their language, not mine.
And I have no doubt that it's easy to sit in the House of Commons, who are people who are terrified of the truth, and ignore this. But there is no doubt that millions in this country agree with us that there is undoubtedly two-tier policing. Morning, Sally.
No, I thoroughly agree with everything that Nigel Farage said, but I was upset that he didn't say that he condemned the violence the night before, and my dog is barking at a cat in the garden. Sally, Lincolnshire.
Lovely, 6:32. Jez, Pete, Mr Walker from Iceland is a Labour peer. Makes his comments even more relevant, says Julian in Newport. That's very interesting talk. How frustrating was that Hampshire Chief Constable's interview? He has asked a few times, how did it make you feel? And all he could reply was he completely understood how others feel. He's not a politician. He should answer direct questions. I think he's a numpty. Gertie, good morning, Jeremy. Good morning, the legend that is Peter Blexley. Starmer and Lammy, this is a great point, are both hypocrites when they moan about US interference. Have they forgotten that the bugger sent 60 supporters of the Labour Party to campaign with Kamala Harris against Donald Trump? Do you remember that?
Very true.
That's
I do.
absolutely true. Morning, Dino. He's just the producer. You don't say morning to him. He's doing all right now. Lammy, when asked about taking the knee for Novak, he said he wouldn't because the family didn't want it to happen. When asked about George Floyd, he said it was done because it was in the COVID pandemic. How stupid is this man?
Can I just...
Sorry, did he really say that?
Please may I just rewind a couple of moments to when we had the great pleasure of hearing Sally's dog bark at a cat. These kind of things reinforce my belief in the human race. It's exactly how things should be. Dogs should bark at cats, and let's all embrace and enjoy that before this Labour government outlaws it, because it will be offensive to cats. It will in some way upset people. They'll be offended and it'll be outlawed.
I don't want to say the wrong thing, contrary to what people will say, but my daughter has gone to America for 3 months to work, am I allowed to say this? Camp America. So I said to her, how are you? And she said, no, I'm all right, there's 14 of us. And without wanting to upset, these are all girls, OK? Of the 14, of which one is my daughter, the remaining 13, 3 are identifying as furries and 3 are identifying as men. So I said, Aves, how's it going? On the lookout for a bit of... She said, there's no Texan cowboys around here. I've got 3 furries and 3 birds who think they're blokes.
Well,
and she's 20.
Well.
The world's gone nuts.
Could you please tell me what a furry is?
Oh, well, so now this is very interesting. So I took her to Brighton University, and she did say to me on the way, do you think you could please not say an awful lot, because it is slightly sort of strange, Dad? So we went there, and I was sat there. This is genuinely true. Mark said the story before, and I was sat there outside the theatre waiting to go in to be talked to with Ava, who's kicking me. One bloke comes past on a skateboard, I'm not even joking, in a tutu with eye makeup on and a rucksack in the shape of a dog on his back, and then two women walk past with tails. And she must have bristled and gone, bristled. They identify as cats or animals, and they have fur surgically sometimes put on, makeup and whatever. Now, I did say to Ava, who said, don't open your mouth, I said, if that happened to any of my children, I'd put them outside the door with a bloody cat litter, because it's ludicrous. But she genuinely said that. And then, of course, the story developed, which Mark knows. I went to the loo, this is Brighton University, and it didn't say men and women, it said anything goes. So I took a pee in the car park. It's an absolutely true story, and left.
Years ago, when we had what were widely known as asylums or nut houses...
Oh, you can't say it. Were you an asylum seeker?
And all of that, right? OK? Those people, I'm sure...
Yes.
You know, the men in white coats?
Yes.
We used to say the men in white coats are coming for you.
That's disrespectful.
Is it?
Well, that's racist, isn't it?
Oh, is it? Oh, right.
Can't you say uncoloured coats?
Well,
you can't say that either.
If we rewind just a few decades, people would have said the men in white coats are coming for you.
World's gone mad. Morning, Jez. Morning, Pete. Can't talk about lammies. Vile. My heart goes out to the family of Henry. I just came back from Devon and wanted to know how your glamping went, Jez. It was hotter than the hottest. It was like sleeping in a volcano. Morning, men. I personally cannot stand Starmer and Labour, but the reason we are in this mess and why Labour are in power is all down to the woke, liberal, useless, lying Tories. And voting for Farage and reform is our way and last chance to save our generation. Roger from Wales, how cruel is it with this government making the family of Novak think that their son's murder is not as important as a criminal like George Floyd? Absolutely spot on. Didn't Starmer and his team of Plank support Biden? Yes, at Cliff in Berkshire. You're right. Bill from Romsey. Morning, both. Labour not spending on defence, but they had money for the Chagos Islands, money for net zero, money for the Shirkers, money for every bugger but the defence of this nation and its realms. True, isn't it?
Wonderfully put. And true. Absolutely true. There's a net zero story we could touch on this morning, isn't there?
Oh, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to go to a break, but you prime yourself, because this is... We watched Farage last week be lampooned by all those Labour politicians. They laugh at him. Over the weekend, a high-ranking union official has gone, reason countries in toilet is because this government's obsessed with net zero. And by the way, he might not speak like that, but he's a union member. We're back in 3.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. JK and Peter Blexley on Talk Breakfast, the home of common sense and the home of the alarm clock Brit. Wherever you are this morning, your views on the day's news, very important to us. 0344 499 1000. New producer for a week, Dino. Just shout that in your voice, that'd be great. 87222. Pete, you touched upon this earlier. Gary Smith, the GMB General Secretary, over the weekend said the government's opposition to North Sea oil and gas was economic madness and a disaster for many people. He added that whoever ends up leading Labour, Burnham, Starmer, whoever, had better bloody well start listening. A recent opinion poll showed that his members, and in fact trade union members across this country, are just as likely to support reform as in Labour, which is absolutely astonishing. But for me, goes back to the truth that Labour, that was based on, you know, the working man and woman, has lost that mantra completely.
Oh, it's gone. It's completely gone. Labour is now, when you look at the government, the cabinet, its MPs, it's a party of the unhinged left-wing socialist.
From Islington, man, most of them haven't been north of Watford Gap.
Yeah, but of some of the MPs that are in more rural areas and what have you that have been parachuted in there and aren't local, they're just unhinged fundamentally. But anyway, GMB, General Municipal and Boilermakers Union. I think one of the greatest titles for a union. I've loved it for decades. Anyway, yeah, Mr. Smith is absolutely right. I was in Aberdeen in April, and I'm going back there again. And I first went to Aberdeen in the 1980s. What a beautiful city.
Nice,
the granite city, the architecture, that stone makes amazing buildings. And it broke my heart to see the demise of that city. Queen Street, once a bustling hub, high street, high-end shopping, everything you want, department stores, so similar to many, many other high streets that have gone down the pan. And now it's a pale shadow of itself. But of course, it still has the ability and the capacity to really ramp up the oil and gas industry in the North Sea. Absolutely. If only there was a government that pressed the button and said, drill, baby, drill, go for it. Although, of course, sweet little Wes Streeting last week, didn't he say that actually there should be drilling in the North Sea? Yeah. I think he did, as part of his leadership campaign.
The thing that's really interesting is Ian from Merseyside, guy, he says, guys, please convince me that net zero is not just another way to control and tax. It might be, but for me, I've always tried to look at it in as dispassionate a way as possible, which is this, and Mark always looks at me through the glass. He knows exactly what's coming. So your skin, right, and then in your garden, underneath your garden, you've got enough gold that will pay off all your debts and make the house nicer for everybody. But you're not going to do that because you might upset the grass or the people that think the plants need to... So what happens is you say, I'm not doing that, but the people next door dig up all the gold. It is absolutely ludicrous. The North Sea oil, gas, fracking is a natural resource. And although I don't actually believe that even the mad friends of the earth don't even understand now that we are so economically at a turning point that we need to do something better. And I think, you know, Ed Miliband's mad. I don't even understand it. Is it control? Is it tax? Is it ideology? It's interesting, though, that Gary Smith, I mean, he obviously said it through gritted teeth. He argued that reform is no friend of trade unionists. But he said he understood why his members were deciding to ditch Labour, despite his union being affiliated to the Labour Party, because of this mad, mad policy. On the back of that as well, and have you got ready my list of election candidates? Have you? Yes, we have, because, of course, whenever we mention the Makerfield by-election, which is on the 18th of June, we have to list all the candidates, which we will in a minute for your public service. Reform has extended its polling lead over Labour to 9 points over the weekend, over the head of that crucial Makerfield by-election on the 18th, as I said. Now, many cynics have been saying over the weekend that that 2% increase is because Farage had the cojones to stand up and speak the truth last week about two-tier policing.
Yes, that's a national opinion poll which gives Reform a lead over Labour. I think I need to point out that local polling in Makerfield shows that, believe it or not, Burnham could be on track to win that. However, let me just go back a little moment, if I may, to your economic downturn, which is actually where I see we are in regards to the environment. There has been an economic evolution in this country in the last few decades in terms of recycling. The overwhelming majority of us now put our bottles and our cans separately and all that kind of stuff.
Do you?
But it's, yes, of course I do, fastidiously, yeah.
Why?
Yeah, but it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Separate your paper and your cardboard and all that kind of stuff. It's a good thing. More of us and more of us take our stuff down the tip and put it in the right boxes so it can be recycled. There has been an environmental evolution. Many more people are buying electric cars. That's their choice, not mine. But there is a general environmental evolution. What the idiot Miliband is trying to do is an absolute revolution, which is damaging to our economy, damaging for jobs, and is just self-harm. Absolute abject lunacy.
I couldn't agree more.
Give me evolution over revolution any day.
800 billion, and I don't want to credit who said it, but this is a genuinely true fact. £800 billion to allegedly by 2030 or 2035 get to net zero. And as somebody famously once said to me, what the bloody hell happens when we get there?
Yeah.
Because we're 1% of carbon emissions across the world, and the rest of the world, frankly, is just getting on with it. I do not understand. And I look at Miliband and I think, you are going to bankrupt a country that, frankly, is already bankrupt on the idea, on the altar of this man. Where is the sense in that? There is no common sense in that.
Let me tell you what will happen when we get there. China and Russia will celebrate by opening new coal-fired energy plants, OK? And they'll laugh at us.
But it's
They'll
true.
go, look at that self-harm that country has imposed upon itself. Economic self-harm. It's lunacy, and it comes from one man who really needs to be stopped.
A really interesting text that I'll dissect, actually. You could do the recording of the by-election candidates from last week, save me reading them out. Have you not got that recording? I might play that in a second. But can I just say, on a serious note, about what you said about Makerfield? In terms of national politics, what will happen in Makerfield will happen, candidates to follow. But I've a feeling that the country, well, let's say people who favour at this moment a change, say Reform, people are supporting Restore, won't lose either way, because let's say Reform does beat Burnham. He's done. Labour are done anyway. They're going to have to carry on with a man with no competence, and they're going to dissect themselves and kill themselves from then. But if Burnham wins, I absolutely guarantee that millions of people across this country who have woken up to the importance of the silent majority have woken up are going to go, no. We can't have somebody as the Prime Minister for 3 years with a different manifesto to what we voted for. And I think the pressure to build to a general election will grow and grow and grow.
And, of course, Burnham himself, should that situation arise, might say, well, I want my own mandate. I am going to go to the nation.
Well, that's political suicide, because he can't win.
Yeah, but, of course, look at Gordon Brown, for example.
He can win in Makerfield.
There was a time when Gordon Brown should and could have gone to the country if he wanted to have his own mandate. And
Ladies and gentlemen, during a by-election or during an election, there's a thing called purdah, which means that we have to broadcast in a very straight way. So, to follow, for correct purposes, this is a list of the Makerfield by-election candidates. I thank you. Jake Austin stands for the Liberal Democrats, Count Binface for his own party, Count Binface Party, Andy Burnham, of course, the Labour Party, Dan Clark, the Libertarian Party, John Dyer for the Independents, Ed Gemmell, the Climate Party, Paul Gould, the Independent, Alan Howling Lord Hope, the official monster raving loony party, Robert Kenyon, Reform UK, Robert Pownall, Protect the Wild, Rebecca Shepherd, Restore Britain, Sarah Wakefield, the Green Party, Peter Ward, Rejoin the EU, and Michael Stanley, the Conservative Party. That's your list of candidates. There we go. 12 minutes to 7. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. Dino in for Christian. Christian's on holiday, and Dino is doing a good job. Morning, Lee.
Morning, Jezza and Peter. Lee from Scarborough in his van. Veteran, off to work. These politicians, they just really haven't got a clue. Farage, absolutely brilliant. Spot on. David Lammy, Keir Starmer, not making any political gains out of it. What a load of... Well, I don't want to swear so early in the morning, but this has made me so mad. I mean, being an ex-veteran and everything else, it's just disgusting. Henry Novak's parents, I mean, good on them. Yeah, they don't want to politicise anything. That's fair enough. But Farage never did. Everybody else, Lammy and Starmer and all these cronies, well, to be honest with you, Jezza, I'm fuming. Absolutely fuming. Great show, fella. Keep it up.
Thank you, Lee. Next is a voice note from somebody called Dallas. This only reminds me, Pete, this is just being honest. Do you know that my... what's the cancer doctor called again? I've forgotten. What's it called? There's a certain... My oncologist... Is it oncologist anyway? Years and years ago when I had cancer, she was called Nicola Dallas. And I always used to say to her, you sound like you should have starred in a porn film. I thought I'd just drop that in. Morning, Dallas.
Morning, Jez and Peter. This is Dallas. I'm out in Botswana. Loving the bones of both of you, by the way. I have a really common sense solution to this problem of accusations of racism. When the police arrive on the scene of such an accusation, the officers should say to both parties, do you have any video footage? You're making the accusation. Have you got proof? No. You're receiving the accusation. Have you got proof? No. OK, we can't take this any further because it's he said, she said. End of discussion. And then they should get into a little squad car and go home. So easy, really, isn't it? Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Lovely. 10 to 7. We're live across the UK. Peter Blexy's just had a text message. Who from?
No, actually, what I'm doing is Dallas is in Botswana, that last voice note. I had the great pleasure of going to Botswana a couple of years ago
tour?
to do some work. So I was just looking up how to say good morning to her or how to say something pleasant in Botswana to her. But anyway.
She's English.
Oh, here we go. Mosso o Moncler. Wishing you a good morning, Dallas.
Sorry to upset Pete, says Terry, but where I live, we've recycled bins, and even Binwen say it's the biggest con job going, as 95% of it goes into landfill with ordinary bin rubbish.
Yeah, but all right, most of us use unleaded petrol, don't we, now? So that's been
He's
part
not
of the
giving ground on this.
environmental
I go to the
evolution.
tip
I
a
get
lot,
that.
and I'd like to say good morning to Brian and Terry, two guys. I'm not telling you where it is, but I take them a crate of Stella once a month, and I just have to drive up now and open the back, and they take it all out and get rid of it and bring it back for me. Top men.
Yeah, but if we go back to our childhood, we had one bin and everything went in it, didn't it? We do separate out the garden waste now, the cardboard and all that kind of stuff.
I don't.
OK,
It's
well...
like the people who go, oh, the weather, climate, I'll be dead, whatever. Morning, both. Mastermind himself, Lammy, looks like and sounds like the other mastermind, the mathematician Diane Abbott. Surely Labour cannot continue. Rachel from accounts is going to the IMF, is the rumour. She's going to the IMF?
Oh, well, there was an article by Liam Halligan, that economist, in the papers over the weekend, that's saying we are headlong into a debt crisis and that we may have to go cap in hand to the IMF for a bailout. And if that happens, inflation's going to spike, cost of living's going to go even higher, and who's going to pay the price? Alarm clock Britons.
Couldn't agree more. Where would you... We're going to do this in honour of Christian, who says this is always a good moment, right? David Lammy, the Deputy Prime Minister, who this weekend took a swipe at JD Vance and said, you shouldn't interfere in the Novak case. What right do you have an opinion? Although, of course, he completely got involved with George Floyd. Let's just remind ourselves about the mental competence. This was him, David Lammy, on Mastermind, my friends.
What was the married name of the scientists Marie and Pierre, who won the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1903 for their research into radiation?
Antoinette.
Curie, which fortress was built in the 1370s to defend one of the gates of Paris and was later used as a state prison by Cardinal Richelieu?
Versailles.
The Bastille. James Gandolfini played a mafia boss called Tony in which American television series?
Godfather.
The Sopranos. Who acceded to the English throne at the age of 9 on the death of his father Henry VIII in 1547?
Henry VII.
Edward VI. In chemistry, what French word is used for a tube for transferring measured amounts of liquids?
Pass.
Which country's so-called Rose Revolution of 2003 led to the resignation of its president, Edward Shevardnadze?
Yugoslavia.
No, it was Georgia.
That's the Deputy Prime Minister of this country.
Former Foreign Secretary, let's us not forget that.
Right, before we finish, front page of the Express, PB. Britain won't send us back, boast criminals. Dangerous criminals thrown out of EU nations are crossing the Channel because they won't be sent back from Britain in a migrant camp on the outskirts of Dunkirk. An Iranian man told an undercover reporter that he was coming to Britain to commit violent crime.
Zach Garner-Perkis, investigations editor at the Daily Express. Take a bow, sir.
Absolutely.
Great bit of journalism. Courageous. They went into this camp.
Yep.
Not the Calais one, another one, Lune Plage. And posing undercover. They clearly had an undercover operative who was talking about how do I get to the UK. It's a really good and depressing read because they interview one piece of garbage who's been in Denmark for 29 years, an Iranian, claims he can't go back to Iran because he's an atheist. And he says, I'm coming to the UK because they simply won't deport me. And when I come to the UK, I'm going to sell drugs, I'm going to shoot people if need be, I'm going to use knives if need be, and the UK won't boot me out. And then they interviewed another one who'd been in the Netherlands for a number of years. They finally booted him out, and he says exactly the same. I'll come to the UK because they won't kick me out.
It's just, I don't know what you think. We'd love to hear from you. 344 499 1000, text to 87222. Some of you waking up, some of you finishing the night shift, getting the kids ready. Some of you might agree with Jay. Morning, Jay.
Morning, Jezza. Morning, Mr. Blexley. I want to say, really looking forward to Mr. Blexley's up-and-coming tour. Oh, anyway, we're going to talk about the Novak and everything that's gone on there with this situation. I've seen some other disturbing footage online as well that I really don't like. You know, I don't see none of this full force of the law on other demonstrators throughout the country. I never have, actually, since Labour have been in, to be fair. But, you know, at least Boris, when he was Mayor of London, he had the kahoonies to go and buy the water cannons, and then all the lefties said, oh, you can't have them, and Sadiq Khan got rid of them. But we need water cannons. That's what we need. You know, I think they're fantastic bits of kit. Every city should have a couple of them, in my opinion, or at least the big cities, you know, the Manchesters, the Londons, the Birminghams, etc. And they can deal with these demonstrators. Very powerful bits of kit.
Peter Blexley, water cannons?
They are very powerful, but the jury's out on their effectiveness.
No, don't start. No, I'm not having that. There's no jury because Lammy's getting rid of the juries. You're lying.
Oh, boom. Very good this early in the morning, Mr. Carr.
Yeah.
They do tend to disperse people. And if you're not controlling the areas into which they get dispersed, they can regroup and come from an angle that you might not be expecting.
I've got a better idea. Why don't we get more men and women of the police on the streets and arrest these buggers and lock them up? Would that be a good idea?
That would be very good, especially when they're chanting genocidal chants and wishing for the extermination of an entire race of people.
I'm not talking about the Palestinian marches. I'm talking about the people who dare to think it's OK to fly the English flag. They need to be dispersed, don't they? Here's a question for you all, by the way. Is it only me? I've started to see the old flags in the cars for the World Cup. Starts Thursday, of course.
Yeah.
What happens, on a serious note... Oh, is it 15 seconds? Have I got to go? Oh, Peter, say goodbye. That's been your hour. Nobody gave me a time.
Fly the flag. Come on, England.
Come on, England. News at 7 next until breakfast.
I think our candidate, Rob Kenyon, is a strong local candidate. You have to have a mixture in Westminster. I always say this, you need a mixture of common sense, life experience politicians like myself. And then you also, of course, need your, super intelligent geniuses to maybe write the laws and enact the policies that we want to see in place.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I've got some breaking news here. The Crowborough Army Training Camp could hold male asylum seekers all the way until 2030.
Good.
After the Home Office claimed it would only be for 12 months. Not much ambition involved in that, is there, in terms of solving the migrant crisis?
Absolutely, and the way that the Labour government gaslit the public when the migrants were first moved in there, saying, you know, you guys are absolutely being mad. Crowborough is a quiet, leafy town in East Sussex. These people, you can see, have been pushed to their absolute limit. They're not the types that you usually see protesting about this sort of thing. But that town has been absolutely desecrated.
You're ruining the country. Get Keir Starmer out. Look, England flag. You're useless. Labour parties are useless.
I love our country. And one of the things about our country is good manners. Not very British.
What Labour advisor thought she wasn't going to be heckled at a petrol station in Leeds? Do these politicians actually ever get out and understand what it's like for real working class people? I thought it was British to exercise a right to free speech. That's what Keith Stalin told Trump. That's what White Van Man was exercising yesterday to Richard III. Oh yes, I remember. We're not really allowed our right to free speech in case we criticise the government.
You can't blame people so many decades away from you for the chaos that has been caused by Labour.
This is cheap politics, isn't it, Syrian?
Well, it's stupid politics. I mean, who raised national insurance on part-time workers? Labour. Who's been the stupid people that have wandered down the road and increased taxes on businesses and on individuals? Labour.
A lot of people get very frustrated, especially when the government says, oh, free school meals, you know, for every kid, not just the kids who really need them, free bus passes, free this, free that. None of it's free. It's subsidised and paid for by the taxpayer. And we're in this constant situation where the government's answer to everything is tax us a bit more, take more of our money, and then give some more of it away generously. It's our sodding money they're giving away.
Yeah, exactly. And it's either someone else's money today, another taxpayer, or even worse, it's the money from our future selves. And we keep...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Scone 7, or welcome along. This is, of course, the home of common sense talk. It's the home of the alarm clock Brits. People who go to work and pay their taxes and expect to be treated fairly. That's not really happening, is it? Welcome to Monday. Before we get back into it, can I say happy birthday to... I know I don't look old enough. My granddaughter is 8 today. I do look old enough, apparently. Isla, have a fantastic day. Enjoy the bike, darling. She's not bothered in the slightest bit about anything other than a brand new iPad, but she's gorgeous. Happy birthday, sweetheart. What is it, 3 minutes past 7? We're live across the United Kingdom. If you'd like to be on, Christian, our regular producer, is on holiday, thoroughly deserved, and has been replaced by a man who failed to get on to Towie or, indeed, Marbs. Dino is here. If you do leave a voice note this morning, could you please respect him by starting Dino? 0344 499 1000, text to 87 222. Start your message. What are you waking up to? Well, you're waking up to our vice... I was going to say our vice president. Our deputy prime minister, David Lammy, has taken a pot shot at the Americans and said you shouldn't be getting involved in this Henry Novak horror. You shouldn't be saying we've two-tier policing. This is our business. This is the same man and the same government that 6 years ago, when George Floyd was callously murdered, not a criminal, but he was callously murdered, the whole world took the knee. The whole of this country. There was a minute's silence in the House of Commons and a minute's silence in the House of Lords, but no, apparently it's different. Brilliant. or not. Hampshire police still at it and in the firing line quite rightly after the Novak horror. Over the weekend, the Sunday Times reporting, which is absolutely frightening, is that actually they tried to get involved. They were concerned about online commentary and potential public unrest, and they contacted the CPS and said, could we release a statement? No, because legal proceedings are still ongoing, and maybe you were frightened about what truths would come out. That's impressive, isn't it? And also a union boss who I'd like to salute this morning, Gary Smith. We love you. I bet he doesn't listen to talk. He's the boss of GMB union. I don't know why I do that accent. He's the boss of the GMB. He says, it's brilliant. He said a recent opinion poll has shown that as many members in his union, which is affiliated to the Labour Party, would support reform. He said, it's not something I would do, he said, but I understand. He said, the madness of net zero. Ed Millipede, they're all mad, he said, and I understand why people are going, Nigel Farage talks sense. 7:05, 0344 499 1000. Damon, good morning.
Morning, Jamie. Damon from Wigan. I cannot believe that the police will interfere as regards trying to make Henry Novak look like he was the aggressor. I mean, seriously to God, when it looks like the police are tampering with evidence, how low will the police forces in this country stoop to make a white man look like he's the one who's guilty immediately? It's absolutely ridiculous. This police service, force, as I like to call it, needs completely breaking down and rebuilding all over again, because if you get the police start tampering with evidence, then nobody's safe. Thank you, Jeremy.
The thing about it is last week, we all know, Farage stood up and said, we have evidence, there is evidence to anybody with a brain cell of two-tier policing. And people don't like to keep going on about this. And you can see in the reaction of let me play you this. This was Lammy. This is brilliant. I mean, brilliantly incompetent. He was on Sky News with Trevor Phillips over the weekend. And Phillips said, why shouldn't the Americans say it's two-tier policing like Farage? And he said, no, it's not their business. He got skewered as well, the madman. Have a watch.
Why is it OK for Starmer, and by the way, your colleagues, Shabana Mahmood, Sadiq Khan, all to express death about views about a death in an American city, even before the trial took place, by the way, whilst J.D. Vance, you get ticked off by you for commenting on a very similar tragedy here in the UK?
Couple of things. Overwhelmingly, the response to George Floyd was horror right across the globe. I remember we were all at home during the pandemic. It was horror.
But that's not the question I'm asking.
No, I'm explaining the context. That's the first context. The second context, of course, is that we are in government. The J.D. Vance is in government. When you're on the backbenches or in opposition, you're free, frankly, to reflect on anything. But I think there is a distinction.
No, it's OK for the opposition to be irresponsible.
No case is exactly the same.
Absolutely skewered, hasn't got an answer, absolutely incompetent. 0344 499 1000. Let's go live to a great man, chief political writer of Spiked Online, Brendan O'Neill. Good morning.
Hi, Jeremy.
How incompetent, seriously, is Lammy? And actually, if we look at, I mean, that interview, he said he phoned J.D. Vance to tell him he was wrong to blame Novak's death on the mass invasion of migrants. Now, let's point out, OK, that piece of rubbish that's now languishing in jail and should never see the light of day is British. I'll make that point. So there was some sort of inaccuracy there. But absolutely he has a right to an opinion, and so do the Americans. The George Floyd thing, and I said this all last week to every politician I interviewed, we had the knee, we had a minute's silence in the House of Commons and the House of Lords. The whole world was full of horror. I remember Starmer saying, I feel very angry, I'm furious. And I'm furious? Oh, be careful, did that incite... I am utterly convinced last week when Farage stood up and said his piece, he knew exactly what he was doing. And the way they reacted tells me it's not a subject this government and many in the House of Commons want to even begin to face up to.
You know, the thing that struck me most about the David Lammy interview with Trevor Phillips was just the arrogance of Lammy, this kind of imperious arrogance that he has, where he just dismisses the idea that he's been a hypocrite, dismisses the idea that there might be anything to rage about in relation to Henry Novak's death. Just this incredibly dismissive attitude, you know, to Trevor Phillips' questions, but more broadly to us. ordinary Brits who are asking questions of this government. So that kind of imperious disdain that David Lammy has for anyone who feels angry about this murder in Southampton is really striking. And just the hypocrisy, it's almost admirable at this point. They can be so brazenly hypocritical, because this is a political class, as you say, which took the knee for George Floyd, which had a minute's silence for George Floyd, which pointed the finger at America and said, you need to get your house in order, you're all a bunch of racists. And now they're reaching for the smelling salts because J.D. Vance wrote one tweet about the death of Henry Novak. I mean, it's hypocrisy that is off the scale.
And as somebody pointed out earlier, you're talking about intervening and they shouldn't have an opinion. What about the 60 Labour officials and party workers that were sent by Starmer to fight against, well, for Kamala Harris against Donald Trump? Is that not intervention in politics? That's sheer hypocrisy as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they must know what they're doing. They must know how hypocritical they're being, because it's so obvious to the public. But I now wonder if this is a government that is so clearly on its last legs, so clearly taking its final breath, that it just doesn't care anymore. It just doesn't care what we think. That's the only message I could get from that David Lammy car crash interview. This is a government that knows it's on its way out. It knows its party is a busted flush, and they're just looking down their noses at us in this incredibly aristocratic fashion. How dare you oiks feel angry? How dare you riffraff get angry about the killing of a white boy in Southampton? You should focus all your energy on an African-American career criminal who was murdered in America 6 years ago. It's just unbelievable, the disdain they have for ordinary people and the anger that we're feeling right now.
It's interesting, this Chris in Lancashire says, Lammy was essentially saying, in my mind, we're all equal, but some people are more equal than others, as the saying goes. He's utterly hideous. Oh, my gosh, says Sharon, that man Lammy, I can't stand the man. How come that man is even a politician? I will never understand. David says, great show. I am really fearful, he says, of this country turning into a modern-day Wild West if this government stays in power much longer. Bring in Sheriff Farage and let's get law and order back on the streets. There's a great picture, by the way, if you're watching online. That was when J.D. Vance came to this country and David Lammy, the then Foreign Secretary, doesn't even know where London is, took him fishing. And do you know what we found out 2 days after that? He hadn't even got a rod licence. Honestly, I know he said the wrong word there. It infuriates me. Lammy, yeah, you say symbolises this government. I'm with you. I can't work out whether they are tone deaf, completely incompetent, stupid, or don't give a damn. I can't work it out, Brendan. I cannot. The decisions, the comments, it's appalling. Appalling.
Yeah. And it's partly that they just want to crush debate. You know, you talked about when Farage stood up in the Commons and made his incredibly reasonable point about two-tier policing.
Well, let me ask you the question. Do you think by saying he felt rage that encouraged those thugs, the renter mob, to go out in the streets of Southampton? Because I'm allowed to say, as a 60-year-old man, I don't at all. I think he was talking the truth about what is particularly obvious to millions and millions of people.
I don't think he's responsible for that whatsoever. People have agency. People make choices. Those idiots chose to throw bins at cops. They chose to make a fuss. He's not responsible for their behaviour any more than you are, or I am, or anybody else. So, no, absolutely not. And there's just this desire amongst the political class to shut down discussion of two-tier policing, identity politics, the way in which race has been brought back into, you know, we all thought race was an old idea.
Yeah.
We all thought that we'd all bought into the Martin Luther King idea, which is that you judge people by their character, not their colour. But what we've discovered over the past 10 to 20 years is that we have governments that have reintroduced racial thinking. We now have police forces, and we've all seen the policy documents, who say you shouldn't treat people equally. You shouldn't be colorblind. You should actually judge a situation according to the racial dynamics. So the police are institutionally racist in a way that demeans white people. That is increasingly what we can see, and the government has to allow open debate about how that happens.
And if they don't, then they are rightly accused of crushing free speech. Lammy's obviously an appalling example of everything's wrong about this government. I thought this was an astonishing story for you. Just involved in the Novak story was the fact that the Sunday Times over the weekend reported that Hampshire police, I thought this has sort of gone by the by, I think it's really relevant, considered issuing a statement challenging disinformation during the trial of the 18-year-old student's killer. It's understood Hampshire police who's Chief Constable, the terribly unimpressive Boone, who's on telly right now, were concerned about online commentary and potential public unrest and had sought the CPS's view on publishing a message saying it would address questions once legal proceedings concluded. Obviously not understanding that the trial's ongoing. I mean, to me as a layman, I'm going, what, you were concerned about what was going to come out about your sheer incompetence in dealing with this, right?
Absolutely. I was so shocked when I read that, because that means that the police were almost willing to jeopardize a serious trial in order to get a statement out there.
Yep.
And why did they want to get a statement out there? Because they thought that the ordinary people online were going to make a fuss. You know, us idiots on the internet were saying things that might cause tension or cause problems. You know, we're back to the rape gang scandal, Jeremy, aren't we? Where the whole point of why they kept it quiet for so long, why they refused to tell us the truth about what was happening up and down England, is because they feared the response of ordinary people. They don't trust the ordinary British public to make sense of these issues and to express their anger in a civilized way. But, you know, what are the police playing at these days? We've got the police down in Southampton behaving terribly. We've got police in the West Midlands who spread misinformation about Jewish Israeli football fans and wouldn't letting them come to this country. We've got other police forces dancing in the streets with guys in black leather chaps and singing about pride and whatnot. We've got police forces arresting women for saying men are not women. We live under a political police force. In fact, I would say it's almost a religious police force enforcing all these modern day woke orthodoxies. That is not what the police should be doing. They should be policing without fear or favour.
I think for me, again, as a voter, not as a broadcaster, and this isn't, you know, solely pro Nigel Farage and reform, because I think he could have acknowledged that said something about the violence. He chose not to. But when he stood up and was prepared to take every bit of crap that came his way from those politicians and say what millions of people think, and I know that from doing this show, and when I watched those sort of people behind him slagging him off and laughing, and that's fine, that's OK, that's their right to disagree. My immediate thought was there are millions of people in this country who are sick and tired of this woke, DEI, diverse crap that seems to have infiltrated almost every part of our being, to the point where, yeah, let's acknowledge it. Let's be really honest. There was racism towards people of colour from the police back in the 60s and 70s, and that quite rightly, even the 80s, needed dealing with, and I'm glad that that was dealt with. But it is, like so much more about our society, gone the other way to the point where it's almost a complete reversal, and it needs changing. It's just extraordinary to me. And I remember reading that the NPCC, the National Police Confederation, out last week saying, you know, as you said, we shouldn't treat everybody the same. I mean, that is utterly ludicrous. And when this station, when certain newspapers that are brave enough to confront it said and spoke out last week and said, if the roles have been reversed, everybody goes, oh, you're being outrageous. No, we're not. We're being factual. Where we've got to is of concern to millions and millions of people, and that ain't going to go away. And it's not far right, and it's not populist, and it's not nationalist. It's just common sense, and we're lucky here that we use that phrase. Can I ask you about the union boss who's made my day? Do you know? Have you ever met Gary Smith from GM? Well, no. Listen, I don't know Mr. Smith, and he patently wouldn't listen to this, but he's the GMB General Secretary, and over the weekend he said that this government's opposition to North Sea oil and gas was economic madness and a disaster for working people, and he added that whoever ends up leading Labour had better start listening, because a recent poll had shown that trade union members in general, and certainly his, were deciding to ditch Labour and be affiliated with Reform. Not that he would be, and he said that, you know, people inside GMB are listening to what Farage and Reform are saying. That is an extraordinary admission on Times Radio yesterday. The head of GMB, and they're affiliated to the Labour Party, for God's sake.
It's extraordinary. It really is. And it's good to see there's a union boss who can kind of recognise what's in the interests of working class people. A lot of them can't these days, but he obviously can. And something that is not in the interest of working class communities is net zero, because it spikes up our energy bills. It destroys good working class jobs in terms of drilling for oil or fracking for gas. It's a disaster for the working classes of this country. And it's abominable that Labour is pursuing it with such zeal. But, you know, the thing is that what this story really tells us, the story about union members being more likely to vote for reform, or just as likely, Reform is now officially the party of the working class. That's what's happened. And you know what, Jeremy, this is more than a protest vote. This is more than ordinary people saying, you know, we're sick of Labour, we're going to take a punt on Reform and see how they do. I think we're witnessing something much more historic than that, which is the working classes leaving the Labour Party in their millions and opting for a new institution to represent their interests.
It's really interesting. I read something in the Tribune, which I wouldn't really, but it flagged up because it slagged me off at the weekend, and it was implying that actually Reform, Restore, even the Greens don't care about working people. They're using them as a lever to get into power, and what they would do is it's just a bunch of posh boys looking down their noses at the end of the day. And I think, whatever your political persuasion, I do think there's a seismic shift amongst all sorts of people, from the top to the bottom and the bottom to the top. And one of the most, for me, powerful things is that people have woken up to the fact that their voice can actually be heard and can make a difference. And when I watched, bringing it back to those MPs, I thought, your time's up soon, guys. You can't just look down your nose from the safety and comfort of the House of Commons and pretend that these things aren't happening. Get out in the streets and you'll discover exactly what the British public are thinking, won't they?
Yeah, when I saw those scenes of Farage being jeered at and people jabbing their fingers at him and basically telling him to shut up because he dared to stand up and talk about two-tier policing, I just thought this parliament is over. Yep. This parliament is past its sell-by date. It reminded me of the Brexit parliament after we voted for Brexit, where they just sat there for years trying to overthrow the largest democratic vote in British history, all these MPs conspiring to thwart Brexit. It's like that. We've got a Commons now full of people who are staggeringly out of touch with the ordinary man and woman.
If you are watching on YouTube and listening to Brendan, look at them behind him, just shaking their heads and shouting out, that guy on the right. Look, they just can't have it, can they? And it's not about Farage, this. It's about respecting the views of millions of people in this country. It's about having a free speech debate. Somebody once said to me, the beauty of free speech should be that you could spend an entire day in the face of talking to somebody who you would fundamentally disagree with everything that comes out of their mouths. But that's what a democracy is about. And it strikes me, without wanting to sound conspiratorial, that so many parts of the press and the media and political parties, they've got an agenda, and the rest of us, it's like I say about the younger generation, it's their way or the highway. Anything from 20, 30 years ago is sexist, racist, homophobic, whatever, and you should be cast aside and thrown in jail for the rest of your lives. And I think they underestimate people's strength. I really do.
You know, you are so right that when they jeer at Nigel Farage, they're jeering at the people who are voting for reform. They're jeering at millions of ordinary people who are very worried about two-tier policing, very worried about the neo-racism of identity politics, very worried about our broken borders, mass immigration, and lots of other issues. That doesn't make them racist. That doesn't make them fascist. In fact, quite the opposite. They want to get rid of this new racism, and they want to go back to an era in which we treated people equally. That's what ordinary people are crying out for. It's not racist, it's common sense.
You're a great man. We love having you on. Thank you so much indeed. And check him out online, Spiked Online. Brilliant, brilliant. Brendan O'Neill on Talk Breakfast, 7:22. It's Monday morning. JK at the controls. Well, not really. Mark is. 0344 499 1000 for your text messages. No, for your voice notes and your calls. Text to 87222. In a sec, overnight and the weekend, we heard that Israel launched a fresh assault on Iran. This is for Tehran. This is retaliation for Tehran firing ballistic missiles into Israel on Sunday night. It's a powder keg there. Next, former fighter but now top military analyst Sean Bell gives us his take on what's happening. Morning, Phil.
Hey, Jezza. Phil in Nottingham here, matey. So David Lammy on Sky News there said the difference between George Floyd and this current situation is that the Americans are in government and they're in government. When they made the comments about George Floyd, they weren't in government, they were backbenchers. So what about Nigel Farage? The comments he made? Because last time I checked, he wasn't in government.
David Lammy says there is no two-tier policing in this country. What do you think?
I disagree with that. I think there is two-tier policing, but also we're seeing this problem across our public services. And in the case of the police, we know that there's a race action plan which says that they should treat ethnic minorities differently. I think that is the very definition of two-tier. And what they're being taught to do is prioritise racism and not being seen to be racist above protecting the public from harm.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to 7:25. So, as I said, Israel has launched a fresh assault on Iran overnight in retaliation for the Tehran firing ballistic missiles into Israel on Sunday night. Further straining this ceasefire that's been on for a couple of months. Trump flitting around the place. One wonders the truth of what's going on. No better person to speak to. Top military analyst Sean Bell, a very good morning. Welcome to Talk Breakfast, my friend.
Good morning.
Where are we at? You've always been able to put it in layman's terms for a man who doesn't know too much me. Where are we at, my friend? Escalation again over the last 24 hours, which rather strains the efforts of this ceasefire, if indeed that's been holding at all. What's your take? I mean, how many days is it now? Is it nearly 100 days?
Yesterday was day 100. The war. Well, the main event here is obviously America's attack on Iran. And whilst it's pretty evident you're not going to solve the problems in Iran by military means, they sort of called a ceasefire early April. And there's been negotiations going on between America's President Trump and the Iranians trying to find a peace. Now, meanwhile, of course, Hezbollah has been regularly causing issues to the north of Israel, firing rockets over the past few decades. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu, although he and Trump were in lockstep against Iran at the start of the war, now Benjamin Netanyahu seems to be pivoting and focusing more on Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, has launched a full-scale invasion of southern Lebanon. Now, the most recent ceasefire, I think it was the 16th of April, the deal was that Israel would back off that attack. But yesterday they attacked Beirut, southern Beirut, which is a stronghold of Hezbollah. Iran has gone, right, there are consequences. We're meant to be in a ceasefire. You've broken the ceasefire, and they launched a series of ballistic missile attacks against Iran. Of course, last night Israel's responded, and this morning Iran has fired some more missiles back, all of which looks like it's got a grave risk of escalation. President Trump must be just at his wit's end at the moment because he desperately needs an off-ramp, wants to finish the war. This is heading in the opposite direction at the moment.
You've been very honest. You're not political, but you've been very honest from your viewpoint about Trump and said to me very early on, whether or not the intention was right or correct, that the fact that what would happen to the Straits of Hormuz and the impact that would have on the world's economies, and the fact that there seems to have been no acceptance that Iran will always control the Straits of Hormuz, struck you as amazing that he went ahead. When you look back at previous administrations who have all probably wanted to do the same and haven't gone about it. It was a mistake in your mind, right?
Well, it is interesting that, I mean, you remember President Trump decided to go into Venezuela and pluck Maduro out at short notice. I think at the time, if you remember back in January this year, the Iranian people had an uprising and they were brutally quashed by the Iranian regime. Thousands, by all accounts, were killed. And President Trump has been doing a series of negotiations trying to stop Iran getting a nuclear weapon. They fell down in June last year when he ended up striking, I remember, Operation Midnight Hammer, taking out some of the nuclear facilities. And of course, in January this year, with this uprising, President Trump's advisors sort of went, well, if we can take out the senior leadership, there may be an uprising, and actually we may be able to solve this problem simply by liberating the country of Iran. Well, the trouble is, in day 1 or 2 of the attacks on Iran in February 28th, they started, the senior leadership, Ayatollah, was killed, so was several of his leadership, but the regime didn't fall. In fact, it's just as powerful as it was before. the mistake, in my view, and I think with a lot of other military analysts, is that America then continued with the military action. And when I've wargamed this when I was in the military, I'm not trying to be smart after the event, it was entirely predictable that the Strait of Hormuz would end up getting closed. And of course, the irony for President Trump is that Iran needs a strait open, the Middle East needs a strait open, the world needs a strait open because they're suffering a global energy crisis, and therefore the world is sort of rounding on America to get it solved, which and no mention of the nuclear issue, which is the very reason President Trump went to war about.
And so the intimation from what you're saying is the sentiment was correct, perhaps the reality of the situation was lost upon him. But where does that leave everybody? This fragile ceasefire that gets broken occasionally. We've seen that this weekend with Israel, with Tehran. Now Trump running around desperately trying to find a solution. Where does it leave the Middle East? Because there isn't a person alive, I presume, apart from the Iranians, who doesn't believe that this evil regime should be allowed to continue. Does it mean that even a country with the might of America is never going to be able to achieve what, frankly, I guess the world wants to achieve, which is to rid the world of these ayatollahs, these mad mullahs in Tehran who financed, let's not forget this, global terrorism. Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, whoever you want, add it up. They do all of that. How do you stop that if the Straits of Hormuz seemingly... Are they in a position where they're impregnable?
I think we've got to be a little bit measured about this, Jeremy. I think there are lots of different countries around the world that are running ways that we don't like, but we don't have a very good track record of going in and suddenly plucking out the leader and then restoring peace and order. It didn't work in Iran. It didn't work in Libya. You know, so we've got to be really careful, I think, to judge how other people run their country. Frankly, America is the biggest democracy in the world, and we're not entirely happy with the way that's being run at the moment. So I do think the answer isn't to go launching in and suddenly go around killing people and declaring war. Negotiation is almost certainly the only way that you solve the issue of Tehran and their nuclear ambition.
Let me jump in then. How do you this is my point. This is why it's interesting. How do you negotiate with terrorists? And second question, if the world wants to rid itself of Iran and it knows it's not possible, why waste its time? Because they're a danger, right? I accept other places are a danger, but the overriding consensus across the world would be that Iran is, as it's being run, not a good thing for anybody.
Yeah, okay, let's... we haven't got time to solve the world poverty, but let me have a crack at, you know, you'll remember back in 2015, at the end of 2 years of negotiation, Obama managed to sign a nuclear deal with Iran, which effectively said, you stop developing nuclear weapons and we will bring you out of the cold and solve the problem of sanctions and the like. Now, President Trump ripped that deal up and imposed sanctions again on Iran. Iran, if you look at what happened with Russia invading Ukraine, they would never have invaded if Ukraine still had nuclear weapons. So most people around the world now know that unless you've got nuclear weapons, you cannot guarantee your security. So whatever we may feel about Iran, that's why Iran is still trying to pursue nuclear weapons.
But that would make a mockery of what Obama signed, with respect, because if he signed a deal in 2015 that said that they would stop building them and they were, I'm not sticking up for Trump here, and they were still building them, that makes the agreement invalid, doesn't it?
No, so the point is that most of the inspectors, etc., believe that that was actually holding that deal. It was only President Trump coming in 2018 when he ripped it up, imposed sanctions. Iran started developing its weapons again. So the answer is clearly you've got to negotiate carrot and stick. How do you ease the sanctions? How do you find ways to actually give Iran an alternative path to nuclear weapons? I'm firmly of the view you've got to try and control nuclear weapons, but the way to do it, evidently, self-evidently, what's happened is that the military action has devastated Iran's conventional military capability. Has it stopped Iran developing a nuclear weapon? No, it's kicked it down the road a little bit, but you can't get rid of the knowledge they've got. Has it destroyed their ability to deliver those nuclear weapons, ballistic missiles? Evidently no. Even Trump this week admitted that 21% of those ballistic missiles were still around. They had 3,000 before the war. That's at least 600, and the attacks we saw last night justifying that. And the third thing he was trying to do was stop Iran threatening its neighbours. It clearly is still doing that on an almost daily basis, both militarily and economically. A war from the major superpower in the world has evidently failed to deliver the success they want. Negotiation is the only way to do it. Trump would have hoped he could have accelerated that path with the war. In fact, it looks like he's done exactly the opposite, and Iran now feels in a stronger position to negotiate than it was 100 days ago.
Quick question to you, my friend. Just a response, really. Front page of the Daily Mail. Spend now on defence or we will pay a cost in blood. Former head NATO chief Sir Richard Sharif. Quick comment to you as a military man. I mean, we've talked incessantly on this show about how successive governments seemingly have seen cutting defence as an easy option, but actually it's come back and bitten us on the backside. It is it not, a national disgrace that this country has such a... I know the values are there, but we are letting our armed forces down, and thus the people, aren't we?
Well, I put it in slightly less dramatic terms. You know, defence is an insurance policy against an uncertain future. At the end of the Cold War, we no longer face the same threats that we did in the Cold War, and therefore it was entirely reasonable we spent less money on defence. We were more projecting power, wars of choice rather than wars of national survival. Since Russia's invaded Ukraine, it's pretty evident we now face a more significant threat. You can't undo time, but the government did a defence review last year in which it outlined what it needed to do. It was a good review, but you can't do that without money. The money was meant to flow in an autumn defence investment plan. Almost a year later, there's been no sign of that. That is the issue, because governments, bluntly, it's a difficult decision because you've got to find money from somewhere. You either borrow it, that's not sustainable. You increase taxes, that is not normally a sustainable model, or you make difficult choices around welfare and the NHS. At the moment, the government keeps delaying the issue. That is dangerous, in my opinion. It's dangerous in the opinion of the senior military leaders, and bluntly, a decision has to be made.
Good man, great to have you on as ever, looking smart as chips as ever. The legend that is Sean Bell, military analyst. Thank you very much, Steve, for joining us. 24 minutes to 8 o'clock, live across the United Kingdom. Alarm clock, Brits, what are you waking up to? You're waking up to the news that we've got no defence. David Lammy's told the Americans, keep your nose out of our business. You have no right to talk to us about the Henry Novak case and two-tier policing. Although we did get heavily involved about George Floyd 6 years ago, and we did take the knee, and there was a minute silent in the House of Commons and indeed the House of Lords. But my favourite moment of the day is Gary Smith, General Secretary of GMB, the union, has said, most of my members, I mean, the majority of my members are going to vote Reform now because it's Labour Party that I'm affiliated to, a bunch of weirdos. We've got net zero. Nobody's drilling. We're absolutely skint, and people shouldn't vote for Reform in my union, but I can understand why they are. All of that on the back of a national opinion poll that came out this morning saying that Reform, Reform have risen 2 points since Farage's outburst about two-tier policing. Labour down 2, now leading Labour by 9%. We'll see what that means. Let's go to the break. Morning, Pete.
Good morning. Yeah, David Lammy. He's got a nerve considering Labour sent about 100 activists out to America to try and derail Donald Trump's presidential campaign, didn't they? They've got a damn cheek saying about that because J.D. Vance is spot on the button. He is spot on the button. And as for Rachel Reeves, Richard III, Gwendolyn from Wallace and Gromit going out to the IMF to get money, they should put clauses into this money loans that she can't spend this money letting millions of people come into this country illegally. They can't spend it on crackpot ideas. They have to spend the money put in the country right for British taxpayers, not for any outsiders that walk into the country and think they're going to get a freebie. You and Peter have a good day, matey.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 20 minutes to 8 o'clock. This is JK on Talk Breakfast, the home, of course, Common Sense and of the Alarm Clock Brits. You're very welcome to be involved. Your views on the news, quite important. I don't know why I've done that. 0344 499 1000. Jez, good morning. Can we find out who those MPs are behind Nigel last week and get them on the show and allow people to question them and hear their responses? Absolutely, unless their time will be up. I couldn't agree more, Mike, but you won't see hide nor hair of them. Barry's quite worried, peeps. With the World Cup coming up, are our two-tier government going to get their two-tier police to arrest anyone who supports England and flies the English flag? Or are they going to pretend to support England to try and get the support from the people who've turned their bloody backs on them? Very good question. Lammy is a strong case for only allowing MPs to serve 2 parliaments. That's why we're stuck with these idiots. 2? Are you winding me up? Paul, morning. Why are people still supporting Labour? I really can't work out any viable reason. You and several million, my friend. Good morning, Pete and Jez. I love listening to you both. This was Blexley saying it as it is and cheering me up for the day ahead. Thank you. I never thought I would see our beautiful, proud country reduced to the state it is now. It's heartbreaking. The sooner Farage moves into number 10, the better. Morning, Jez. Blexley, what a legend. He's a moment... He is a moment of sanity and clarity within a sea of misery. This is the Britain I remember. Great show. Tony is in Bradford. Mick's in Wallington. Don't bother going to... He's a miserable sod. Don't bother going to the World Cup. England don't stand a chance. They won't get past the first stage. Don't bother watching. Happy bloody Monday to you. Pete, a wacky idea. Yeah, it is wacky. Any immigrants coming to the UK have to join one of the armed forces for you. It will stop immigration overnight. No. Sorry, ridiculous. JK, Mastermind Lammy, not. I'm sure he did mention COVID yesterday in the interview. Perhaps Dean can find it, says Margaret in Birmingham. Dean can't even find the toilet at the moment. It's not going well. Perhaps we can get the millions back from France and spend it on defence. Oh, don't be so full of common sense, you stupid woman. £500 million to France for doing absolutely sod all is a brilliant deal, isn't it? Not. Jez, how can we have digital ID when many more people are identifying as furries? I had a voice note about furries being taken away. And Jez, your daughter Ava will return in 3 or 4 months, having had the best experience of her life in Camp America. I went there as a 19-year-old many years ago, says Roger in Hounslow. I'm surprised it was available at that stage. You're so old. Oh, this is a voice note. What's the name of the furry hood? Gaz, isn't it? Gaz, good morning.
Morning, Jez. Great show, mate. Gaz from Pontefract. You talking about furries and tutu-wearing skateboarders. To my mind, these people are the people who, when you were at school, who didn't belong to any particular group. You know what I mean? You had your popular group, you had your, your smoking group who used to sneak off at break and hide behind the bus shelters and that. And these were the ones, in the old days, you'd call them outcasts, a bit unkind, but kids were unkind. And so now, to my mind, this is the only way that they can get the attention that they never had. And this is why they do it, mate. Have a great day. Goodbye.
Do you know what I love about this show and the Alarm Clock Brits? They don't care, do they? Basically, all furries are outcasts with no friends. 18 minutes to 8. We'll say a very good morning to a man whose political career, journalistic political career, has just taken off since I first discovered him in a back street. I'm joking. The political editor of The Sun, the legend that is Jack Elsom. Good morning, Jack.
Good morning, Jeremy.
I thought you'd be at the Monaco Grand Prix relaxing on some yacht or something the day after, no?
No rest for the wicked. I've got a by-election to cover, but after that's finished next week, then maybe we'll get a bit of calm. I can go to Royal Ascot, I can go to Wimbledon, I can rub shoulders with you in my morning suit, as we like to do.
Well, I'll see you there at Royal Ascot, absolutely. Let's move on before you drop me right in it. I want to talk about your article, Bashing Brexit Won't Save You, PM. It's the least of your worries. Great article on page 10 of The Sun this morning. Nothing's going to save him, though, with respect, is it? Or maybe it could. I've got a theory. You might think I'm mad.
Well, listen, clearly I think that the clock is ticking on Keir Starmer's premiership. He's probably measuring it more in weeks and months these days rather than years. I do think, though, that what we're in danger of right now is the Prime Minister constantly using Brexit as basically the excuse for all of his problems. The amount he talks about it these days. And let's not forget, Keir Starmer was a second referendumer. He's in a born-again Brexiteer during the election where he realised that to actually win any of these red wall seats, he needed to embrace Brexit and try to make a success of it. But now the interests for Keir Starmer and his immediate concern is not the wider electorate. It is that narrow vested interest, which are Labour backbenchers and Labour members, and they are pretty hysterical Remainiacs. And so what we're seeing now is Keir Starmer massively trying to cozy up.
You're not saying he's flip-flopping, Jack, are you?
He's more than flip-flopping because he's flip-flopping because he's changed his mind so many times. And I just feel that, you know, we can all have arguments about Brexit and the extent to which it's been a success. As I say in The Sun today, you know, it hasn't been sort of the doomsday apocalypse scenario which many Remainers warned it would be. But if we're honest with ourselves, many of the opportunities that Brexit offered have been squandered by total political ineptitude, whether that's immigration controls, whether that's free trade deals.
It hasn't been implemented properly. That is absolutely true. Couldn't agree more with you, bud.
Exactly.
Couldn't.
But what we're seeing from Keir Starmer is basically him using Brexit as this bogeyman and saying that it's responsible for all manner of ills. And actually, you know, I went to Keir Starmer's big speech, massive make or break reset speech. How many is that now? Last month. He devoted a whole section to the ills and evils of Brexit. There was not a single mention of the crippling level of taxation in this country. There was not a single mention of the eye-bleeding welfare bill. There was a fleeting mention of migration. And I just think that there is a rump of people in the Labour Party that believe that Brexit is the root of all evil. They'd be much better served. They want to stand a chance of winning the next election, which is looking vanishingly thin right now, of tackling the big issues of this country, which is overwhelmingly, if you look at the polls, immigration and the economy.
I couldn't agree more, and that's why it's quite interesting. I never thought I'd actually say this to you, although you probably understand why I'm going to say it. I think he's incompetent. I think he's been one of the worst, if not the worst, Prime Minister we've had. But the thought sometimes hits me that how he managed to get them elected, knowing how utterly strewn with disagreements the party are, and you're right, Brexit, the economy, taxation, net zero, all those things, they will implode without Starmer, actually. I mean, we will list all the candidates so we can mention it. I was quite interested over the weekend. Reform UK has extended its polling lead over Labour to 9 points ahead of the crucial Makerfield by-election, and many saying that that increase is because Farage had the cojones last week to stand up and call out two-tier policing. I've got a theory I'll put to you as the political edge of the sun. I said this to somebody this morning and they thought I was mad. I don't think that opposition parties can lose either way. We'll talk reform in this instance with Makerfield. I think if they win the seat, Burnham's toast. There will be chaos inside the Labour Party. Who's going to step up and try and get rid of Starmer? Who has the charisma? He might even stay, I've no idea. And if they lose and Andy Burnham marches on Downing Street, as he's made no secret that he wants to do, I do believe, genuinely, that the silent majority, Jack, in this country will not let it rest that a Prime Minister has got a new manifesto and has got 3 years to rule. I don't think that can... I know everybody will say, oh, but there can't be. I think public pressure will grow and grow and grow.
Yeah, Nigel Farage is clearly wargaming both scenarios, right? You know, as you say, if Reform win, it is fantastic for them. They've clearly shown they can beat even the popular Andy Burnham in his backyard of Manchester, and then clearly wreak absolute havoc on the Labour leadership election, because who's going to take over then? Is it going to be Wes Streeting, Angela Rayner, Keir Starmer? You know, they will tear themselves apart in the subsequent months. But you're right, if Andy Burnham does win, and at the moment it looks like he's going to win, then there will be those questions about mandates. You know, all of the words which Labour politicians, including Andy Burnham, including Angela Rayner, including Wes Streeting, said during the Tory years when they changed leaders without electoral mandates, will be thrown back at them. You know, Andy Burnham said, when Liz Truss implemented her mini budget, we need a general election because these decisions haven't been democratically chosen. They have been, they have basically been chosen by a few thousand Tory members, and so we're going to get all of that back again. Now, I think Andy Burnham probably will withstand that pressure. You know, prime ministers only call general elections when either they think they are certain to win them, or in the case of Rishi Sunak, almost certain to lose them. And Andy Burnham at the moment doesn't want to be a 3-month prime minister. He probably wants to be a 3-year prime minister. And so I can't see a situation in which he'll actually call an election if he gets in. But you're right, the pressure will be absolutely immense. You can imagine a situation where in the Commons every single week, He gets up, and what happens? He's told he doesn't have a mandate to govern, so sit back down and call that election. Have the guts to call an election is what the line will be.
Absolutely great to have you on, mate. Look, have you got your waistcoats ready for Royal Ascot, dear boy?
Yeah, all set and ready. Let's
Good
get
man.
top hat, though.
It's the only time we meet in morning suits and quaff champagne. We don't really. Listen, good man, thank you so much indeed. Check his article today, page 10 of The Sun, the legend that is Jack Elson, political editor. Morning, Kieran.
Good morning, Jeremy. This is Kieran in Blackpool. I heard you say a few moments ago that you think people have, inverted commas, woken up in this country. Well, I'm not so sure. We've had Laurel and Hardy in charge of this country for the last 50 to 60 years, and look where it's got us. If the people in Ashton and Makerfield are still voting for Laurel and Hardy, then clearly there's a proportion of them that haven't woken up. Cheers. Good show. Thanks a lot. Bye.
There you go, 10 to 8. Here is your list of candidates in the Makerfield by-election. Jake Austin stands for the Liberal Democrats. Count Binface for his own party, Count Binface Party. Andy Burnham, of course, the Labour Party. Dan Clark, the Libertarian Party. John Dyer for the Independents. Ed Gemmell, the Climate Party. Paul Gould, the Independent. Alan Howling, Lord Hope, the official monster raving loony party. Robert Kenyon, Reform UK. Robert Pownall, Protect the Wild. Rebecca Shepherd, Restore Britain. Sarah Wakefield, the Green Party. Peter Ward, Rejoin the EU. And Michael Winstanley, the Conservative Party. That's your list of candidates. 10 to 8 o'clock, we're live across the United Kingdom. It's been a while since we had my next guest on, and we should never leave it this long. He's a legend, former press secretary to the Queen, former royal journalist. Dickie Arbiter, good morning.
Morning, Jeremy.
You're looking very suave today, sir. No, I don't usually...
I must say the same about you, too.
I don't usually read the Mirror, but I wanted to get you on briefly, my friend. There's been lots in the press, starting, I think, Friday or Saturday, about Beatrice and Eugenie living rent-free in royal accommodation. There were rumours last week that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor had actually charged staff to live in the grounds that he gets for free. There's an article in the Mirror today on page 2 entitled Let It Go. William plans to crack down on royals cashing in on property and non-working members living rent-free. I would say he's absolutely spot on to look into this, wouldn't you, Dickie?
He is absolutely spot on. You've got to remember that when William comes to the throne, he's 2 generations away from his grandmother, and his grandmother put a lot in place, like putting Beatrice and Eugenie in St James's Palace in 2007. Eventually, Andrew coughed up something like £20,000 around about 2012 to compensate a bit for rent. But I don't know how you put a value on rental for St James's Palace. It's almost impossible. But William, looking into housing accommodation for non-working royals is obviously on his priority list. I'm surprised that 2 intelligent women haven't read the optics since 2019 and thought, we can't go on like this. One has got a home in the Cotswolds, the other one's got one in Portugal. If we need something in London, then we buy something, but not live the way they are. One at Wren Cottage, Kensington Palace, the other one at St James's Palace. It really is too much in today's day and age.
And I think that day and age comment's spot on, Dickie, because one of the things, excuse me, that's become readily apparent is if there isn't greater transparency from the top down, the very people who have doubted the monarchy for so long are going to have an absolute field day. William has his critics in royal circles. He doesn't do as much as his father. He's this, he's that. But he, I think, comes with a sort of understanding about how optics are central to the monarchy surviving. And you're right. And I don't want to make it just about Beatrice and Eugenie, although I happen to believe that they're more ingrained with what their father and mother were up to than they'd like us to believe. There are loads, I suspect, of royals who don't do an awful lot, who have lived rent-free for a long time. And that sort of, you know, you're up in the distance and we're not real. And I just don't think people will accept it anymore, my friend, especially with the cost of living and all the hassles that life entails nowadays.
But people are not going to accept it any longer. And with all due respect, the Gloucesters, Duke of Kent, Princess Alexandra, who doesn't do much now because she's quite infirm, but they have been paying rent, supplemented by the late Queen and now King Charles. I think we've got to feel a certain amount of sympathy for Charles. He's inherited a lot that he probably didn't know about. When it came to his mother's decisions, she didn't share them with the rest of the family. They were done deals, and that's it. So he has inherited a lot. He inherited Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. He's inherited this housing complex issue. And, you know, what else is there? I hope there isn't more, because a man who is still undergoing treatment for cancer can only take so much. But so far, he's doing all right. But he is going to have to address this whole housing issue, because it's not going to go away.
Is there frustration in his camp about the fact that all of this has landed in his lap? I would never criticise the Queen. She was the most consistent feature of my life, and I've said that all of my life, to be fair. Did she not move with the times? Did she make too many excuses for people, or was it just a different world back then, Dickie?
She moved with the times, but very slowly, at snail pace. It was a different world in her time. She was brought up in a different era, and she tried to retain the way she was brought up. Charles has been with a lot of controversial issues, and he's trying to address them. But, you know, again, the way the system works, it does work slowly, but ultimately it will work out, with probably William taking the initiative.
Do you think that William's accession to the throne, when it happens, will save the British monarchy? Because I do.
Yes, it will. I mean, the monarchy has undergone all sorts of issues over its lifetime. This is one that is not going to go away. It has now got politicians involved. They want more transparency. Look, there is a lot of transparency when it comes to money. The royal household, they publish an annual report. The figures are there of what the money is, how it is spent, where it comes from, who earns what. So anybody interested can go online and read the financial report, as they can with the Duchy of Cornwall. But, you know, people basically are lazy. They'll take what's in the papers. The newspaper journalists will cherry pick to make a story. But if you really want to know what's going on financially, go online, go on the royal website, look at the annual report. It will give you the financial spending chapter and verse.
Very quickly, I've got 30 seconds. Why should the monarchy survive in your mind? You're a patriot. Why?
Because there's no other alternative. If you look at executive head of state or ceremonial head of state, they cost as much. People don't recognise that. Italian president costs over 200 million euros a year. Where does that money come from? Comes from the taxpayer. So don't say that we are spending too much. We are spending proportionate of the costs in comparison to other monarchies throughout the world.
Great to have you on, Dickie. Always great. My dad loved you. Thank you so much indeed for coming on the show. Dickie Arbiter, former press secretary to Her Majesty the Queen. Almost 8 o'clock. Steve Baker, former government minister, on all things political after the news at 8. And your text 87222 and your calls and your voice notes 0344 499 1000. This, my friends, is Talk Breakfast. Almost 8.
Varda Calacane was a 32-year-old black man. He murdered 3 white people. Not once in any part of the conversation or reporting was there any racial profiling or even the question raised.
I don't want to drag this boy onto the issues, not onto Henry, and that is something that the family have asked for.
35 years I've been doing this. I've never seen a moment when most of mainstream media and most of mainstream politics was more out of touch with the country than over this issue. Quite extraordinary.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
The video footage was so deeply shocking, the behaviour of the police disgraceful and stupid, and it shows something deeply rotten in our society.
Enough of anti-white prejudice. A promotion of the idea that white lives matter just as much as black lives.
Nigel Farage said today it should be white lives matter. Are you making the same point?
It should be everyone matters.
And when you hear Henry's faltering voice, losing its tone, losing its volume as his life ebbs away, you're not going to say, I don't think so, mate. And when somebody tells you they've been stabbed, your first job as a police officer is the preservation of life.
Henry was pulled across the gravel, his hands forced behind his back, and he was placed in handcuffs. Instead of being treated as a dying victim, police formally arrested Henry for assault and read him his rights. That was the last thing he heard.
I do want to address the Henry Novak case and what has happened since I was on air yesterday. Because after his son's murderer was sentenced on Monday, Mark Novak said of his son, "We do not want his death to be used to create further division, hatred or tension. We want his story to help make our streets safer for everyone." Since then, Nigel Farage, the Tories and pretty much everyone else, people like me, we're all being accused of stoking that very division, hatred and tension that Mark Novak talked about.
If the public lose trust in being treated fairly by the police, can he take some action, end this divisive practice of two-tier policing and make sure that all British citizens are treated the same?
Mr. Speaker, I don't believe there's two-tier policing in this country. His response has been to appeal for rage. Rage. That's his response to a father who's lost his son and asked for that not to happen. Exploiting this tragedy to create grievance and division would be wrong in any circumstances, but to do it when the family are expressly saying, please don't, is unforgivable.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back or welcome along. Just gone 8 o'clock. We're live across the United Kingdom. This is Talk, of course. Oh, look at that. The home of common sense and the home of you, the alarm clock. Brit, don't know what you're up to today. On your way back from the night shift, bless you. On your way out, kids are in the car. Everybody's running around headless chickens. What are you waking up to? Well, my friends, you're waking up to the front page of the Daily Mail, where a former NATO chief has issued the stark warning. Spend now on defence, Keir Starmer, because you have been saying you're going to for 2 years, or it will cost us in blood. This is after 14 years of the Tories cutting defence. All the problems in the Middle East overnight, of course. Israel launching a fresh assault on Iran. They attacked Israel on Saturday. The ceasefire is not happening. More of that throughout the show. But at home, the man who I think, wherever you are this morning, should prove absolutely that you can achieve anything in life. David Lammy has made it to Deputy Prime Minister of this country, ladies and gentlemen. And over the weekend, he took exception at the American Vice President, J.D. Vance, getting involved and saying that he did actually think that, two-tier policing was relevant and we had a problem with migration. That's what Vance said. Well, you know what, Lammy, it's nothing to do with you. Keep your noses out. This is a man and a government who had plenty to say about how furious they felt and how angry they felt when George Floyd, a career criminal, I don't like what happened to him 6 years ago, but the outpouring, everybody took a knee. Dean took a knee. He's in for Christian. Politicians, footballers, everybody took the knee. There was a minute's silence in the House of Commons and the House of Lords. But here, Oh, no, slightly different. Farage absolutely trolled in the Commons and by other people for daring to say this two-tier policing. I think Farage was absolutely spot on. But let's just play Lammy, who thinks that we shouldn't be listening to our American neighbours. Let's talk about hypocrisy. This is him with the brilliant Trevor Phillips. Can't answer a question. Useless. Have a watch.
Why is it OK for Starmer, and by the way, your colleagues, Shabana Mahmood, Sadiq Khan, all to express views about a death in an American city, even before the trial took place, by the way, whilst J.D. Vance, you get ticked off by you for commenting on a very similar tragedy here in the UK?
Couple of things. Overwhelmingly, the response to George Floyd was horror right across the globe. I remember we were all at home during the pandemic. It was horror.
But that's not the question I'm asking.
No, I'm explaining the context. That's the first context. The second context, of course, is that we are in government. The J.D. Vance is in government. When you're on the backbenches or in opposition, you're free, frankly, to reflect on anything. But I think there is a distinction.
No, it's okay for the opposition to be irresponsible.
No case is exactly the same.
The man is utterly, utterly incompetent. He talks about horror over George Floyd. What about horror over Henry Novak? Let's give you a bit more on this story. Over the weekend, the police force at the centre of Henry's case considered issuing this is in the Sunday Times, a statement challenging disinformation during the trial. But the CPS went, well, no, it's an ongoing state, you incompetent bunch of idiots. You can't do that. To me, the layman, I'm thinking that there, if you are watching online, there's Bloon. Is that his name? Or Boone, the chief constable. I think they knew exactly the criticism they were going to receive, and so they thought they'd get a little statement out there. The whole Henry Novak case, however long this has gone on, I am not letting this go. This is utter hypocrisy. There is two-tier policing, and unless we as a society face up to that without fear of upsetting people, we're going to get nowhere. It's fundamentally obvious to me that the different scenario in the situation that happened, it would have been a different situation, and that is not acceptable. 0344 499 1000. The other news story that's brilliant is, you all know what most anybody with a brain cell thinks of net zero. Oh, there's the North Sea. Lots of oil, lots of gas, lots of money. No, let's not touch it. Ed Millipede, nightmare. Gary Smith. This is shocking. The GMB's General Secretary has said over the weekend that the government's opposition to North Sea oil and gas is economic madness and a disaster for working people, and he totally understands why even his members in GMB in their thousands, a union affiliated to the Labour Party, which means they give money to the Labour Party, are all now going, well, I think we better look at alternative operations. I think we might look at reform. By the way, just to give you this, Reform, in the latest opinion poll published early yesterday, has extended its lead over Labour to 9 points ahead of that rather vital by-election. So, 7 minutes past 8, if you want honesty, 0344 499 1000, there's only one guest to get on. Former Conservative Government Minister, top man as well, Steve Baker. Welcome to Breakfast.
Good morning, Jeremy. Thank you very much for having me on.
Always. Where do we start? Can we start with defence? I don't want to talk about the Middle East. It's a powder keg and we'll follow that as it happens. But front page of the Mail screams, Steve, and you know what you're going to get from me? You always get honesty. Spend now on defence or we will pay a cost in blood. This is not just on Starmer. I accept that he did his review 2 years ago, but apparently can't work out that he should stop paying scroungers on welfare and send it on defending this country. The Tory government absolutely culpable in this. You can throw Cold War at me, but it was an easy cut, and it's proven to be a disgraceful cut, hasn't it, the armed forces budget?
Yeah, it has, and I often complained about it. There's a few things to just tease out very quickly. One is it was a big mistake to move the cost of the nuclear deterrent from the Foreign Office into the defence budget. That's £6 to £7 billion a year, which comes out now of the other equipment programmes. The second point is I asked again and again generals, admirals and air marshals, why must you keep buying such sophisticated equipment? Who are we going up against? And the answer was always we'll always fight with the Americans. We have to have the equipment that works with them. We're just there to bring political heft, not military heft. Well, that hasn't turned out to be a good decision, but I'm afraid that came from the generals and the air officers and the admirals. And then overall, of course, the other issue is that in their desperate hope to get re-elected, which I think we would have got re-elected in 2015 if we'd done the job properly, but they preserve spending on, for example, healthcare because it's so important to the public. Well, we've got to make different trade-offs now, haven't we? Because if we want a serious defence, if we want to listen to these warnings, well, we need to move the cost of the nuclear deterrent out of the defence budget. We need to make sure that the cost of the intelligence community is not moved into the defence budget, which is planned, because those things will all squeeze normal equipment, which we now desperately need, including developing our drone capacity.
And surely more than anything, we need to accept as a society, whatever political party you're in, the Labour Party won't accept this, and he tried to do it. We have a welfare budget in this country that I think a month ago we reported on this show is now greater than the money that we get in terms of taxable revenue. So all the people that work and all the tax that's paid with the highest taxation rate since time began is still less to the exchequer than we're paying people to be sat at home. And by the way, and I have to do this, Steve, you know I do, and I make no apology to the people for this, there are millions of people who are not able to work, who want to work, through illness, through disability. But I am utterly convinced, as I'm sure you are, that I'm afraid there are hundreds of thousands, possibly a couple of million now, who are gaming the system. And somebody needs to toughen up and go, you're not going to get all of this for nothing, give something back and start using that money. What about 500 million to the French for stopping immigration? What's that money spent on? They don't do anything. There are ways of saving money and spending it on defending your bloody nation, isn't there?
Absolutely, yes. So on the welfare budget, I'll have to check the figures after the programme. Forgive me for not having them immediately in my fingertips, but I bet it's income tax and the welfare budget, which are comparable.
Yeah.
We'd have to just be really careful about where pensions fit into that. But what is certainly the case is the welfare budget is far, far too high. But I'm old enough to remember, and I dare say you are, and many of your listeners, that when we came to power in 2010, we were complaining about the welfare budget, that people weren't being encouraged back into work and so on. And I'm afraid it just keeps rolling on. And we will need to think really fundamentally about how we provide for those who cannot provide for themselves. We probably need to do it more locally. And yes, despite the risks, we probably have to have more of a local human touch so that people actually decide, yes, this person, I'm afraid, is deserving or is not. Because what I've seen over the years is you end up with people who, for example, have mental health issues, who end up thinking they're undeserving. And then they end up dead because they don't look after themselves or don't look after their medicine. I've seen that happen. Not enough power to keep the fridge on, to keep their particular medicines in shape. Once somebody ended up dead, that was reported in the Commons. So we need to look after the people who actually do need looking after, whilst those who could go to work and make a contribution are assisted quite firmly to get on out there. And it's a tricky thing to do. It probably needs to be done locally. But one thing's for sure, we can't keep going on moaning about the welfare budget decade after decade, but not succeeding in cutting it.
Couldn't agree more. Now, you worked in the House. How long were you in the House of Commons for?
14 years.
You achieved a lot. You were a government minister. How in the sorry to be I don't mean to be rude. How in the name of God did David Lammy end up as the Deputy Prime Minister? Has there ever been a more incompetent bar Keir Starmer? I don't know if you saw this interview, this car crash interview with Trevor Phillips at the weekend. We played it just now. He seemed to be taking a position of, I've spoken to J.D. Vance, the Vice President. I don't like the way he was getting involved in British politics. There isn't two-tier policing. It's not. We're fine with immigration. Keep your nose out. To which Trevor Phillips rather brilliantly, I thought, said, but hold on a minute, hold on a second, mate. 6 years ago, you and all your colleagues were jumping up and down saying that, I mean, described it. When George Floyd, career criminal, don't like the way he died, was killed, there was horror across the world, and that's why we all spoke out and talked about being furious. Really? That's interesting, because you've told him that he has no right to have an opinion on Henry Novak's case. Complete and utter hypocrisy. Threw out some idea that, you know, when you're in government, it's different than when you're in opposition. Absolute balderdash. The man, how did he get to the position? The Novak thing, I'd love your take. There is two-tier policing, isn't there, Steve?
Yeah, I'm afraid I think there is. I mean, the years and years of progressive politics have elevated racism to a crime beyond all others. And the result is this Henry Novak case, and it's absolutely disgraceful. The police should be following a traditionally British approach to justice and the rule of law. Zero tolerance plus equal application of laws to everyone. And it's because of hysterics from people like David Lammy that this doesn't happen. And the two are connected. The tone that politicians take, the arguments that they make, the way they treat officials and police officers matters. So with somebody like David Lammy, for example, he said that I and others were worse than Nazis because we wanted to uphold the referendum result. And when he was challenged, he said that language wasn't strong enough. Now, on the one hand, it's too ridiculous to be genuinely wounding, but other people will have heard him and thought it was true. Now, for someone to behave like that, double down on it instead of apologising and saying it was heat at the moment, that is a reflection of his character. So you ask, how did he get to be there? Well, I'm afraid it is a sad reflection on the Labour Party and a sad reflection on our democracy that not only did he get away with something like that, but he's got away with legion other examples of foolish behaviour. And then when he became Foreign Secretary, you see the former chief of MI6 putting out a sycophantic quote, welcoming him, as I suppose he must. But what a sad reflection on all our institutions that this is the quality we get.
Couldn't agree more. Just talking about the Henry Novak case, because I was really quite vehement about this and I won't let it go. You know, during the George Floyd story 6 years ago, we had the knee. We also had a minute's silence in the House of Lords and the House of Commons. I haven't heard anything about anybody thinking it would be a good idea for an English kid to have exactly the same. You might have seen, I'm sure you have, the response to Nigel Farage standing up and saying two-tier policing. I'll put in brackets. I think he did it absolutely deliberately, close brackets. But some of those MPs, mate, some of the response, it beggars belief to me, because I think they don't think cameras are on them and millions of people won't think you're missing the point and we're going to deselect you in the next election. Really short-sighted.
Well, honestly, if only more people did join political parties of all kinds and deselect their poor quality MPs. You know, I faced a reselection meeting in 2024. There were only 11 people turned up, and 3 of them have always hated my guts because one of them wasn't the MP when he wanted to be. You know, there was no way I was ever going to win him round. And when you look at a room of 11 and 3 were never going to give you a chance over the course of 14 years, well, you know, it's a different calculation to if you're looking at a room of 200 or 500 people, most of whom strongly support you. So, you know, I would say I'm afraid democracy is a participative sport. And, you know, if the public want to see MPs deselected, and my goodness, there are plenty of MPs of all parties who ought to be deselected. I'm not going to give a list, but I can think of some. But they should be deselected. And the only way to do it is to join the political party of your choice, take your friends, you know, behave sensibly, have moderate views, but just turn up and very quietly ask the difficult questions and then vote to remove them and have someone else. That's the way it ought to work.
Just very quickly before we let you go, love having you on. Please do it regularly. Gary, have you heard of Gary Smith from GMB, the union? He said, and I quote at the weekend, net stupid zero is ridiculous. It's a financial disaster. It's going to destroy working people's lives. And he then admitted he was rather shocked that so many in his union are now looking towards reform. But that's not the point. The point is, even a union that is affiliated to Labour, which means it gives money to Labour, thinks that net stupid zero is a disaster economically for this country. Everybody is seemingly coming round to the common sense view that we've got liquid gold, to quote Trump, under our own sea, and we're about to go cap in hand to the IMF because we're skint.
Well, Jeremy, God bless him, and I love a repentant sinner, but where was he and all the others standing up for working people when I and Craig McKinley and others were taking all the heat necessary as members of Parliament to say we can't afford the cost of net zero? We put it out there, we got called deniers, all the usual stuff. I'm absolutely thrilled that the dam has burst. I'd like to think that I and others were part of taking the sledgehammer to the dam. Its dam is now thoroughly burst, and the sooner that the elite that govern this country change their mind or are removed and we get rid of this policy, the better.
Just very quickly, your response. You know, you just said about the welfare benefit budget. This is from Maureen. I've had a few like this. The only part of the welfare system that this bloody government will ever do anything about is the pensioners, who are not able to do anything about it. They hate pensioners. They've proven that already. What's your response to that, Steve?
No, well, to be fair, I don't think anyone hates pensioners. But look, I want to be really serious because you always press for honesty and you always give honesty, so I will too. Age-related spending is what's overrunning our budget overwhelmingly. There is a huge problem in the welfare budget. Of course there is. But it's age-related spending which drives up the cost of social care for councils, which drives up the cost of healthcare, and which drives up the cost of pensions. And it is absolutely daft that we give winter fuel payments to people who don't need them. Again, I've been around for long enough to remember people telling me they'd give their winter fuel payment to charity or buy a decent bottle of whiskey with it. And yet, when the Labour Party tried to get rid of that absurdity, and we should, by the way, look after poorer pensioners.
Of course.
But we shouldn't be wasting money on better off pensioners.
No, but you've got to come up with a system that makes sure that you look after the people that need it and don't give it to the people who are laughing in your face. I mean, that to me is a perfectly plausible way of approaching the whole situation. But
Absolutely.
what they did was the blanket approach meant that 10 million pension. There was even research from the Labour Party's people that 4,000 people would die, for God's sake. I mean, it's just political suicide.
Well, I'm not saying for a moment that the Labour Party got it right. The Labour Party gets these things wrong. But to be honest and fair to your listeners, the really big problem overwhelming the public finances, it's not defence, it's not international development, I'm afraid it's not in the end welfare, it's age-related spending. And we've got to be honest with people. I can feel my blood rising, knowing that I shall be unpopular with your listeners. But if we're going to avoid the welfare state defaulting on its obligations in the next 20 years or so, we've got to be honest that we can't afford all the age-related spending. That will need us to reorientate what we do spend to better look after those who can't provide for themselves. And for those people who, for example, are on very generous gold-plated public sector pensions, they might have to go without their state pension. And by the way, they wouldn't miss it terribly. So we need to have that conversation, and we need to have it soon, because in about 4 parliaments' time, the welfare state will be thoroughly unaffordable because of age-related spending. And I'm sorry, folks, that's the way it is.
We love your honesty, mate. It's always great to have you on. Former Government Minister, thank you, Steve Baker, 8:21. Hold on 1 second, it's that moment. Oliver William Robin Kyle is sat in the car going, I'm not getting out, Mum, until he says hello to me. I'm not going to school. You can go in now. Good boy. Love you loads. And your sister, Rissy. See you later on. We'll say very quickly, good morning, Sean.
Morning, Jeremy. Sean from Grimsby. That David Lammy, he is thick as mince, mate. He really is. And it's no surprise that he's a politician, because you don't have to be particularly bright to be a politician. He won't be able to get a job anywhere in the private sector because he's just so stupid. Look, do we need Americans lecturing us on stuff that we already know? Not particularly. Can you blame them? Of course you can't, because even Americans from thousands of miles away can see what's going on. And people forget, Americans are our closest ally. We have bled together. I've served with Americans, mate. We've bled together and we've died together. And they've got every right to have an opinion on what's going on in our country, considering that Americans are Europeans. Great show, mate.
Good man, 8:22. Let's cross to Westminster. I love this next guest. He's always out, come rain or shine. The Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, Mel Stride. Welcome to Talk Breakfast. How are you, my friend?
I'm very well, thank you, Jeremy.
And so you should be, judging by what's happening in this damn country under this government. Can we start with Lammy? And I really don't want to make it personal, but I do think it gives belief and hope to anybody who wants to aim for the stars. The comment from J.D. Vance that's gone down badly with this government is that, you know, this is an example of two-tier policing, something that your party have acknowledged. This Henry Novak case is disturbing. There is an issue with immigration. But for Lammy to jump in and say, we don't need you, and then for every single news outlet, Mel, to go, well, hold on a second. In 2016, 6 years ago, when George Floyd was murdered, and I didn't like the career criminal, but what happened to him was appalling. Whilst the trial was on, I think, or even before it started, they all came out, didn't they? It's disgusting. We feel fury. We're taking the knee. We're this, we're that. And yet we're telling our closest ally they don't have a right to an opinion. It's hypocrisy, isn't it, Mel Stride?
Well, good morning, Jeremy. I think it's inevitable that when something as horrific and awful as what happened in the case of Henry, and one's heart goes out to his family, his friends, his parents, happens, then it's going to get some element of international reach and people are going to comment. I think the big takeaway, though, Jeremy, from all of this is the approach to policing, and where we've ended up in a situation where the leaning into issues of not being discriminatory has led to the wrong actions being taken in some circumstances by the police. And that's why I think Kemi, in a very level-headed, mature and sensible way, is calling for a rapid review now into exactly what has happened so that we can learn those lessons and change the guidance that the police are operating under, because it is not right, I think, that you have guidance that says that based on a person's ethnicity they should be treated differently, which in some cases leads to the kind of terrible events that happened in the way in which the police appear to have handled the terrible death of Henry Novak.
I agree with what Kemi is asking for. I sort of see this as a dual problem. I think there is two-tier policing, and people have not liked this comment for the last few days. If the situations or the roles have been reversed with Henry and that piece of scum that's now in prison, I suspect, judging by the guidance, there would have been a very different outcome. And that is appalling in a society. I mean, we're living in a society now, Mel, where you can't call it a police force, because apparently that upsets people. But I also think there was incompetence of an extraordinary, staggering degree, which also needs to be dealt with. I wanted to talk to you about your favourite subject, money. Is it true that Madam Reeves might be off to the IMF soon with her cap in hand, begging because we're skint?
I think it's certainly true, and this is comments made by Ken Rogoff and Charlie Bean, formerly of the Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee and the OBR, that sometime this decade there is a chance that we end up with a debt crisis. And this is something that my party has been saying for some considerable time, because if you run an economy in the way that this government has, which is that you tax the living daylights out of businesses, which of course destroys growth, if you go out and do what socialists always do, which is to borrow and borrow and borrow until they run out of other people's money, and do all that spending, you elevate inflation, and we have got the highest inflation in the G7 at the moment, and you don't focus enough on getting control of public spending, particularly the welfare bill, getting people off welfare and into work. If you don't do those things, then you end up in a very brittle, vulnerable position, and that's what they're pointing to. And when these external shocks come along, like what we see in the Middle East, and we don't know where that's going to end up, I'm afraid the economy is not in a good position to withstand that, and I think that's the point that those two eminent economists are pointing to.
How does... I mean, I just love your view also on net zero for a reason. Gary Smith, the boss of GMB, a union affiliated to this government, has said that the net zero madness is a disaster for working people. And it does strike me, if the Conservative Party was elected, you'd be Chancellor. I'd actually be able to speak to a Cabinet Minister, which would be exciting. But here's the thing, right? As a financial whiz kid, as I'm going to call you, and I keep doing this, I know it's basic, but there you go. You're heavily in debt, and the only money you've got that could pay off that debt is sort of liquid gold under the sea. But you don't use that because for some reason that's not a good idea. But you allow other people to use that gold, and then you buy it off them for twice the cost. I'm not Einstein, but that's not the greatest approach, is it, Mel?
No, there's one word that describes that, Jeremy, and that's bonkers. As you say, we have got oil and gas under the North Sea. This government is licensing and taxing it off the face of the planet. In the meantime, out of the same basin, the Norwegians are extracting those resources, and in the case of gas, selling it back to us. It's not even good for the environment in terms of carbon, because the alternative is often liquid natural gas that has 4 times the carbon footprint of using the gas that's readily available to us. And of course, you've then got the economic consequences that you mentioned. You've got 200,000 jobs up there dependent on that. You've got tax revenues that could be accrued to the Exchequer and strengthen our public finances if we actually started to really ramp up the drilling and extracting those resources. And that is what, as a party, we recognise and we're completely committed to doing.
But it's economic madness, isn't it? To have something that you can have and not use it, but let somebody else have it and then charge you. I mean, I just honestly, that to me, that is the most incompetent thing. And as we sit here and we talk about the welfare budget, and we talk about high taxation, we talk about how businesses are being crushed, it doesn't make any sense. And just to finish with you, it makes me sit here sometimes and think of, has this party genuinely, this government, has it got a death wish, or is it just total incompetence in your mind, Mel?
I think it's a government that never, ever had a plan. It had a lot of sort of vague notions as to what it wanted to do, some of them decidedly misplaced, and the attitude towards oil and gas is driven by a misplaced understanding of the basic economics. But there's one other point I'd make here, Jeremy, that I think is so important when it comes to our oil and gas. It's about energy security. If we're not extracting these resources, we are more dependent on other countries, including ultimately places like Russia in turn, and that is a vulnerability that on the security side we can avoid, as well as avoiding all the economic pain that we're suffering through not extracting those resources.
You're a top man. We really appreciate your time every week. The excellent Mel Stride, Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer. Thank you so much indeed for joining us on Talk Breakfast. 8:30 almost. Where has the morning gone? I don't know. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. The thing about this show is we flip from light to shade, good to bad, funny to serious. Morning, Harvey.
Morning, Jezza. It's Harvey from Hemel Hempstead. Got a question for you. If I see one of these furries injured, do I call the RSPCA or do I call an ambulance? I'm a bit confused, to be honest. This world's gone absolutely mad. I don't understand. People can become animals, and we've got Labour councillors saying that that's OK. What's going on, Jezza? What's going on?
A furry is somebody who wants to identify as an animal. This came about because I spoke to my daughter this morning, bless her, Ava. She's in America, on Camp America, and I said, how's it going? Any good-looking boys? You're allowed to say that. She said, well, there's 13 other girls, of which 4 want to be boys and 4 are furries. And I said, what's a furry? And she explained to me. I don't know, is the honest answer. I don't know where I've genuinely, my kids look at me and go, yeah, it's a furry. What's wrong with that? What's right with it? Talk Breakfast, God. The House of Commons and the House of Lords held a minute's silence for George Floyd. I'm asking all politicians to go to the Speaker because I think we should hold a minute's silence for Henry Novak. Do you agree?
Well, if we believe in equal treatment for people, and if we believe that people who are being held down and cuffed to the police say, I can't breathe as they die, then we absolutely have to.
One final question, Nigel. Would you take the knee for Henry?
No. I don't take the knee for anybody. I'll stand and bow my head.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 8:33. Loads of you getting involved. 0344 499 1000. Dino is replaced Christian for this week. Christian's on holiday. Dino has sort of stumbled on a career in producing because he failed in an audition for Towie, and then The Only Way is Essex. He's a single man who can't hold down a relationship, and he's basically having the time of his life because the rest of his life's quite sad. That's what his mother just told me. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. Stevie, good morning.
Morning, Jeremy. This is Stephen Hartz. So, the Americans have no right to comment on British politics, but the Labour government that are sitting in office today had a right to send their activists to campaign against President Trump. Is that right? Make it make sense for me, Jeremy, please. Have a good day, me old mate.
Good man, thank you very much, Steve. Hello to Sean in Gloucester to say Britain, we must first rid ourselves completely of the Uni Party and especially the hypocritical ideological Labour Party. First, we must have common sense to see we have a problem and admit the problem before we can sort it out. Couldn't agree more. Good morning to... Why don't you get our next guest on the phone then if the signal's rubbish? Christine's in Southend. Jez, I'm a pensioner. There are millions of people in Britain all electric. If we have to have power cuts, how do we cope? I won't be able to cook, wash, heat my home. I have a theory. Oh, God, this is awful. Is this a way to kill off pensioners? Oh, my God, I hope not. Pete. I don't want illegals in our army, not a bleeding chance. All right. Hello, Rich. JK, just like the rest of the world's institutions, the IMF is... the International Monetary Fund is contaminated by woke and net zero lawyers. They're a disgrace. Bill, wow. Deputy Leader Lammy says there's no two-tier policing, but please note, he thinks a blue cheese is red Leicester. He must be colour-blind. Are you allowed to be? Tracy in Chingford. A crime is a crime and a criminal is a criminal. How can it be right that if two people commit the same crime, one will go to prison and the other will get a slap on the wrist just because there's a different ethnicity? That is two-tier policing and two-tier justice. Jez says Graham the Joiner. I'm just thinking about this rubbish government. Can they be removed from power? Well, listen, we're doing our best. Sorry, I'm joking. Pete, our lack of fighting ships and submarines is laughable. Could we recommission the HMS Victory? Don't start me on the boats. Has that bloody boat reached Cyprus yet? HMS dragging your feet? The one that's... Oh, just a joke. Morning, JK. Very clear there's more to come out on poor Novak. Yeah, I agree with you, Betty. Mark Selby, or Mark... See, I never know. Mark in Selby? While Keir and Lammy call for ending division in our society and state that there are no two-tier polices in place, we are policed, or our laws function, only to be pushing through a law of Islamophobia. How about white working phobia? Labour just don't care about the majority in the UK until they need someone to cough up for their own insane policies. Give me strength. Dave's in Cheltenham, posh there. The main pension problem is the public sector, police, fire, teachers and doctors. Who can retire at 55? Greece and bankruptcy spring to mind. And Richard Evans, finally, for now, low TV. Can I tell you that if you earn over 35 grand, you are not eligible for winter fuel allowance? I was given mine. It was then taken back by HMRC. HMRC. The people who are quick to write, take your money, charge you lots. But have you tried ringing them? Not a bleeding chance. 24 minutes to 9 o'clock. We're live across the United Kingdom. Now, bad signal, so we've only got him audio, but a man who always delights you. Retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector Mike Neville, good morning. Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. I'll tell you what, we'll go... Honestly, do you think Christian would have... Disgraceful, Dino. Right, we're going to try again. We're going to go to an ad break. Mark, it's just incompetence, isn't it, on Christian's front? No. Jeremy, oh, God. Simon in Paddock Wood asks the question of the morning. Is there a transgender furry? If so, what toilets do they use? The Woods. Back in 3.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Right, welcome back. Take 2. Listen, it's not actually Dino's fault. He's done a fantastic job. Just sometimes the technology, well, people's phones. Mike Neville, retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector. Take 2, hello.
Hello, sorry, Jeremy. Bad signals in Wales. Bad signals.
You see, there's the reason. All them sheep. I'm joking. Mikey, morning. Welcome to the show. We just wanted your take, mate. The audience always love your input. This Henry Novak case that you and I talked about in some detail last week. Hampshire Police. I found this astonishing today. Hampshire Police, the force at the centre of all of this, issued a statement, right, challenging disinformation during the trial of the 18-year-old has been revealed. It's understood that Hampshire Police were concerned about online commentary and potential public unrest and had sought the CPS's view on publishing a message saying it would address questions once legal proceedings concluded. Now, Mike, unless I'm missing the point, you can't do that because it's in the middle of an ongoing trial. But to me, that smacks of, we're going to get slaughtered. There's loads to come out. We want to try and quash it. A police force, man.
It is unbelievable. And this is a police force that isn't solving very much crime, that focuses on race action plans more than catching burglars, robbers and thieves. They really need to get a grip. My young daughters live in the force area, and I want them to focus on keeping women and girls safe, keeping us all safe, and catching criminals. But they're simply not doing that. They've lost the way. The police have lost the plot. It's not just Hampshire Police. It's most of the police service. I saw that a Muslim, the Shadow Equalities Minister, a Muslim MP, has written to South Wales Police saying, why are you focusing on this Muslim hate speech instead of focusing on crime? We really need the police, the senior officers, to get back to solving crime.
Can you answer me a question? Because I sit here every day and there are certain things that I can't answer. Look, there was definitely racism apparent at times in the 60s and 70s, and there was undoubtedly questions that need to be asked about the police. But how has common sense allowed it to go so much into the opposite direction that, you know, when people say there's two-tier police, you agree there's two-tier policing, don't you?
Absolutely.
So why won't people in positions of power dare to accept what millions and millions of people in this country know to be a fact, Mikey?
Because they live in a cult. It's not, to them, this isn't policies or anything. This is a religion. They absolutely believe, like the people who believe net zero, who would bankrupt this country for net zero, these people would ruin the police for these race action plans. They absolutely believe it with religious zeal. And the only way to deal with them is to get rid of them. You'll never change them because they're committed. It's like going back 500 years and telling the Pope, oh, it's not that the Earth doesn't go around the sun goes around the Earth. And if you took him up in a rocket and showed him, he wouldn't believe you because the religion is such that they believe that 500 years ago and it's in their heads. And these people believe this stuff and they're never going to stop doing it. The only way to do it is to remove them, change the police training and get the police back focused on what they should be doing.
You know that the Novak, the horrible Novak case, where do you, like me, stand on the belief, however much criticism I've taken for this view, that if the situation had been reversed, and it's not just about a Sikh young man, but there is an issue here about ethnicity. If the roles had been reversed and a young white man, Henry Novak, had stabbed this guy and played the same trick, it would have been a completely different outcome, wouldn't it?
It would have been a completely different outcome. Do you know, I remember 20 years ago, Jeremy, as a detective sergeant, some of my team chased a man in Brixton. He jumped off a balcony and died trying to flee the police. The chief superintendent's first question to me was, how are the officers? Was it legitimate? His first question was the man black? And he wasn't. He was a white guy. And that sums up to that has been going on now for 20, 25
Is it
30
fear
years.
or is it ideology, the fear caused by ideology?
I think it started off as fear. Being criticised and people not and promotion is a big thing in the police. Some people sell their grandmother for the next pip or crown in the police. They would really do that. But then now it's taken over with almost religious fervour. And what you haven't got, they'll tell you about diversity. There's no diversity of thought. All of them think the same. No one in the room will put their hand up and say, look, this is really crazy, because that's what it needs. It needs somebody like me. It needs somebody like you in that room to say, hold on, let's rethink this. But who thought, for example, the way this investigation was dealt with was a good idea? But everybody has sat in a room and done that. But the main thing for me, Jamie, as well, that I feel sorry for the young officers who have to every day deal with this stuff. And they're frightened. And we know with Hampshire Police, you know, people go on these courses, and do you know the best thing? Not many people are like me. They keep their mouths shut. They just take it in, sit there, and they go along with it. And that's a bad way into society, and particularly if we've got police officers who are having to do that.
What chance have we got, though? This has just been passed to me. Front page of the Telegraph. Police forces' efforts to combat institutional racism have not gone far enough, a police race watchdog has claimed. Emimbola Johnson, who chairs a scrutiny board overseeing police race action plans, said last night her watchdog had consistently found that progress in tackling racism had been too slow, too inconsistent and too poorly embedded. She warned that the backlash over the police handling of the murder of Henry Novak risked throwing away improvements in anti-racist policing.
Well, that woman is a black barrister, and she's made a lot of money. The trouble is, all the time, Jeremy, you follow the money. How much money has been made out of diversity and equality courses?
I don't know. How much has been? Well, courses, yeah, courses, yeah.
If you look at police forces, how many people do they employ doing this? How many people like this woman, this barrister here you mentioned, how many people have made a good fortune out of promoting this ideology? And look where we've got to. We've got to get back to that, what it tells us in the Bible, what Martin Luther King says, that we look at people's hearts and not the outward appearance. But we've gone down this track now where we're saying we don't like racism, and then they're producing race action plans which say we should treat people differently according to their race. How can that be right?
Can't be right. Other thing I wanted to ask you about quickly, and we really appreciate your time today, Mikey. Front page of the Express. Britain won't send us back. Boasts criminals. This is a great piece of journalism by Zach Garner-Perkis, investigative editor of the Express. Dangerous criminals, Mike, thrown out of EU nations are crossing the channel because, and I quote, they won't send us back. In a migrant camp on the outskirts of Dunkirk, an Iranian man told an undercover reporter that he was coming to Britain to commit violent crimes because he'd just come up with an excuse, and we're so bloody soft we won't send him home. I give up. I genuinely can't.
It's shocking, isn't it? It's shocking. This is a political class who think everybody who comes across in that boat is a victim. You only have to hear it in Starmer's voice. Oh, smash the gangs. Because in his head, the people in the boat are victims. And even if they've got the worst criminal records, they won't deport them. As I say, it's all part of a cult. It's part of an ideology, and we need to break it. Otherwise, it's going to break the country.
Just one thing before we go. Two-tier policing, yes. Two-tier justice. A Prime Minister that's massively unpopular, a Conservative Party that did nothing to help the situation. Do you believe we can get back on the right side? Because every single time... I mean, I do this show every day, as you know, and the unhappiness, the sense of how this country isn't what it was is overpowering some mornings, mate. There's nothing to feel good about. I'm being honest. I'm not trying to be down.
And I'd say the worst thing as well, Jamie, is that up in Makersfield, you've got Rupert Lowe, Nigel Farage and Kemi Badenoch squabbling, and there was a cartoon in the Telegraph which showed all of them pointing a gun at each other, and Andy Burnham sneaking through and getting in there. And somehow all the parties which represent common sense need to speak and get together. Otherwise, we're going to end up with this Labour, Green, Liberal Democrat, SNP, Plaid Cymru lunacy, and we'll just get even. It will get even worse. Somehow, people's egos have got to be put to one side for the good of the nation.
Good man, Mike. Thank you. Enjoy Wales. Here is, ladies and gentlemen, a list of your candidates in the Makerfield by-election. It's a thing that we have to do. We have to list them all in a very balanced way. Take it away, Big M. Jake Austin stands for the Liberal Democrats. Count Binface for his own party, Count Binface Party. Andy Burnham, of course, the Labour Party. Dan Clark, the Libertarian Party. John Dyer for the Independents. Ed Gemmell, the Climate Party. Paul Gould, the Independent. Alan Howling, Lord Hope, the official monster raving loony party. Robert Kenyon, Reform UK. Robert Pownall, Protect the Wild. Rebecca Shepherd, Restore Britain. Sarah Wakefield, the Green Party. Peter Ward, Rejoin the EU. And Michael Winstanley, the Conservative Party. That's your list of candidates. Thank you so much indeed, whoever did that voiceover. Angie, good morning.
Morning, Angie from Portsmouth here. I'm sorry, my blood is absolutely boiling. Blaming old people and the pensions for the welfare thing. Yes, we do have an ageing population, but unless I'm wrong, do not all government employees who already get a gilt-edged pension paid for by the taxpayer also receive a state pension? Well, I'm sure they don't need that as well. Why don't they forfeit that, save that money, and say cut down the welfare budget? Why are they getting double bubble from everybody? Of course they don't want the state pension to go up or the triple lock, because it doesn't affect them, because they already get a massive pension paid for by us. Totally unfair and unjust. Great show. I'm a bit calmer now. Thank you.
Good, that's what it's for. 0344 499 1000. Let's go to talk. Well, I think she's legendary, this woman. And honestly, she always speaks the truth. Oh, my button's fallen off. Samara Gill, talk radio. I'm supposed to say talk presenter now. She's got her own thing at home. I don't say talk reporter. Hello.
I didn't know about that promotion. All right, I'll take it.
Everywhere you go, it works. What a lovely backdrop. Where are you? New York or your apartment? Oh, look, my microphone's a bit wonky. How are you, love?
I could be anywhere. I could be anywhere. No, it's really interesting what you were talking about with Mike just now about how promotions are tied to DEI and wokeness in the police force, because I actually did a really interesting interview, which I'll bring you tomorrow, about someone who was fired effectively from the police force for questioning Islam during a DEI training course. Interesting, that.
I'm old-fashioned, you see. Can you imagine me going on a DEI training course?
Nope. I can't imagine you getting out of it.
No, it's not going to work, is it?
You're common sense, JK. That's the problem.
Well, we try. What did you make of Lammy at the weekend? Did you see that interview with Trevor Phillips where he says the Americans shouldn't have an opinion? But I think that everybody in his party rushed 6 years ago to take the knee and describe the horror and the fury they felt about a career criminal called George Floyd being wrongfully killed in America, and I want to make that point. But I said last week on this show, I can't believe we haven't had a minute's silence in the Commons and the Lords as we did for George Floyd for Henry Novak. I wonder if that's about ethnicity as well.
You're completely right, JK. Interesting that David Lammy found time to ring Washington while the public is still waiting for answers and a proper concerted effort from the Prime Minister as well as Lammy. I mean, it's just so interesting that he would go and destroy what's left of the relationship between the US and the UK.
But the hypocrisy of saying we don't want your intervention when they all intervened 6 years ago. And then he came up with some ridiculous thing about it's different when you're a backbencher to being in government. No, it's not. Politics is politics.
Totally. And, I mean, you wouldn't have Donald Trump angrily on the phone or even J.D. Vance if Keir Starmer was to, and Angela Rayner were to take for George Floyd. Do if you know what I'm saying, you know, they wouldn't try and intervene and correct their wrongs. So I think it's pretty interesting of Lammy to go and do that. Just because they went fishing once doesn't mean
without a license, because he's an idiot. Without a fishing license.
Exactly. It doesn't mean that he can go and tell the deputy leader of the free world what to do. I mean, Lammy's the one with the pseudo job. Deputy PM is sort of an optional post, whereas J.D. Vance is the one who has actual power and knows what he's doing and wrote a very, very interesting post. I mean, I didn't agree with everything J.D. Vance said.
Me neither.
I mean, as someone who, I mean, J.D. Vance is literally married to a daughter of Indian immigrants. His children are half Indian as well, and she is a product of migration. It was very interesting wording from him, and I think that's the issue with the people from the US and even Elon Musk to some extent. They don't quite understand the UK and all the intricacies of our culture. But broadly, what he said was very poetic and interesting, and it's completely his right to weigh in on this, considering how Labour weighed in on George Floyd and policing.
And let's not forget, Labour, we don't think you should intervene in Britain. I thought the Labour Party sent 60 party workers, to the American elections 2 years ago to campaign for Kamala Harris against Donald Trump.
100%. That is exactly what happened. And, you know, when politicians spend more time arguing with JD Vance than addressing public concerns, they are totally missing the point. It's like, Lammy, turn to your own people.
Yeah.
Stop getting into catfights on your
you can't
phone
say,
and WhatsApp.
don't say cats, because we've been doing furries all morning. Do you know what a furry is?
I do, unfortunately. I do. It's horrific. Just make sure your children are well away from them, JK, unless you want some real
Or as
issues.
Brian Goodwin says, regarding furries, if someone identifies as a cat, make them do their business in a litter tray, take their temperature every day up the backside and put their food and water in a bowl on the floor, de-flea them, and I bet they'll be a human being by the end of the week.
Yeah, that's interesting parenting advice.
Yeah. Now, listen, can you come in and see us soon with an exclusive? We've missed you.
Yes, I'll come in tomorrow, and I've got a very gripping exclusive with Luke Salmons. It's pretty horrendous what he was telling me about what actually goes on inside the police force. And just quickly, I mean, I just want to say that the Met Police you were speaking earlier, I did a bit of Googling. They spend £5.2 million annually on DEI. So there you go.
She's in tomorrow, the lady in red. She'll have to deal with Dino, the poor mayor. But anyway, thank you, Samara Gill, tomorrow. Let's get some quick sport done, please, Big M.
90 minutes in 90 seconds. From The Sun.
We say a very good morning to the Sun's Justin Allen. Hello, Justin, how are you?
I'm all right, Jeremy. Yourself?
You need to help me, kiddo. New heart scare for Ericsson. That was horrific, that story. Christian Eriksen 5 years ago, collapsing, his heart stopped on the pitch. It happened again in a friendly in Denmark. He can't play again, can he?
Well, he's going to have that conversation with the doctors and his family. I personally, I wouldn't play again if that had happened to me. It really is scary because, as you say, it happened 5 years ago. Thankfully, he was wearing one of these internal defibrillators, which are absolutely incredible things. As soon as the heart stops, it shocks it back into action. And, you know, he fell clutching his chest. He was unconscious for a short while, and the defibrillator did its work. I was actually at Wembley, Jeremy. I don't know if you remember a few years ago when Tom Lockyer,
yes, from Luton Town,
midfielder, he collapsed on the pitch at Wembley in that playoff final. And remarkably, he went on to play again and then suffered, like Christian, another cardiac arrest just 7 months after that. He didn't have an internal defibrillator at the time, so he was very lucky to be alive. I mean, football, actually, I know it's strange to say this, but it's actually one of the safest places to actually have such a situation because of all the medical staff there. But he's had an internal defibrillator installed, and he's been playing for Bristol Rovers over the last year.
Only I'd love to have more time. I wanted to mention Ericsson. England, very quickly, try and help me out. How can I get enthusiastic about a bloody team that only just beat New Zealand?
Oh, it was awful. You know, on the back of some of the underwhelming friendlies against Japan, and we lost to Senegal, didn't we? And then this one, it was played at a snail's pace. Obviously, he gave everyone 45 minutes. We didn't have the Arsenal lads there, obviously, who've been playing the Champions League. I want to see, against Costa Rica, his starting 11. I really do. I want us to sort of put on a performance that can excite the nation. I mean, obviously, it's only a friendly. We can't get too carried away. Obviously, they're acclimatising to the heat, etc., and the conditions. But no, I mean, I have to say, against Costa Rica, I want to see at least, you know...
I've only got 10 seconds. Quick question, just. Can we win the World Cup? Yes or no, man?
Quarterfinals, I'm afraid.
We love you. Justin Allen from The Sun. Everything's in Sun Sports. You build towards the World Cup. It's almost 9 o'clock.
I'm angry, Julia. The family are angry. Everybody who has seen that video or even heard the story understandably will be angry. But the job of politicians is not to tell people, go out and be angry. People have a right to protest. I think that actually people coming out and showing solidarity with the family, showing they're upset about it, sends a signal to political leaders. What it shouldn't be is us whipping up people's rage.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
You know, you have to remember that Peter Murrell has been the chief executive of the SNP for nigh on a quarter of a century. He's been with Nicola Sturgeon since 2003. She said that she didn't have access to his personal records. They had separate bank accounts, so we can take, well, what you want from all of that. The list that you gave is unbelievable. 124,000 in a camper van, Fortnum and Mason's picnic hampers, a couple of lawnmowers, one for 3,000 quid, 3 dynamic Savile umbrellas, £970. The list goes. A wine coaster. I needed to look up what a wine coaster was. 3,500 quid. So the list goes on.
When you're talking about crimes as vicious as rape, serial murder, really depraved crimes, it's quite clear to me that the usual considerations around whether you should be lenient because of this context, whether or not there should be more room for rehabilitation in that context, just don't apply. From the simple commonsensical basis that if someone is capable of doing that, they're a threat to society.
But this is the thing,
I don't want to take that risk.
If these kids genuinely, you know, and they are kids, everyone involved's a kid. I mean, it's just absolute travesty. If they don't know that all of these things are wrong, then by definition, we need them off the street.
Yeah. So there's now a label for children who skip school. You know, parents can't sort it out. In the old days, I used to think that skipping school was against the law. You know, and parents used to be taken to court. Well, no longer anymore. They found a label now, Ian, which allows them to sit at home. Again, I keep saying, on tablets, wasting their time.
Wow.
Universities. Let's get everyone going to university. Well, I think a fundamental job of education is to prepare children for the society they're going to live in a positive way, i.e. prepare them for a job. You've got the welfare state, I've already said, wonderful thing, isn't it? But a safety net, not a way of life.
Henry Novak's last words were, "I can't breathe," as he was handcuffed, having been stabbed not only in the front but in the back as well, Okay, he stabbed him in the chest twice, stabbed him in the face once, stabbed him in the back of the leg twice. I mean, what an attack. Let's wait and see what sentence this vile piece of garbage gets. Of course, none of it of which will bring back dear Henry. May his soul rest in peace.
It's just so shocking, Pete, I mean, this is... We're so used to criticising the police for mistakes. This is the worst one I've ever come across.
But it's where you've got with this woke, fluffy, liberal, progressive nonsense about anti-racism.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back or welcome along wherever you've been. Just gone 9 o'clock. We're live across the UK. Welcome to the home of common sense, the home of the alarm clock Brit. and the place where your views on the day's news are always welcome. 0344 499 1000 for your calls or your voice notes. You can text us 87222. Stories galore today. Front page of the Mail. Spend now on defence or we will pay a cost in blood, says the former NATO Chief General Sir Richard Sharif. Successive governments during the Cold War cut defence to the point where many people would say we don't actually have one anymore, but other people would disagree. David Lammy, a man who proves ultimately that anybody can achieve anything in life. He's our Deputy Prime Minister, which is extraordinary. On the record this weekend as having had a go at the Vice President of the United States for getting involved in British politics over the Henry Novak death. He talked about migration vans. He talked about policing. He has a right to an opinion. No, Lammy thinks he doesn't, to be fair, but it was pointed out to him rather brilliantly by Trevor Phillips that, well, actually, let's play the clip because it makes me smile. This was David Lammy being skewered by Trevor Phillips. Enjoy.
Why is it OK for Starmer, and by the way, your colleagues Shabana Mahmood, Sadiq Khan, all to express views about a death in an American city, even before the trial took place, by the way, whilst J.D. Vance, you gets ticked off by you for commenting on a very similar tragedy here in the UK?
Couple of things. Overwhelmingly, the response to George Floyd was horror right across the globe. I remember we were all at home during the pandemic. It was horror.
But that's not the question I'm asking.
No, I'm explaining the context. That's the first context. The second context, of course, is that we are in government. The J.D. Vance is in government. When you're on the backbenches or in opposition, you're free, frankly, to reflect on anything. But I think there is a distinction.
No, it's okay for the opposition to be irresponsible.
No case is exactly the same.
9 5:05. So much in the news, including Gary Smith, the GMB General Secretary, who says most of his people in his union would now look towards Reform rather than Labour, a party that they are affiliated to and pay money for. 0344 499 1000. I'm delighted to have my next guest on. God, he's hard to pin down. Lord Michael Gove, editor of The Spectator and former Cabinet Minister. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Jeremy.
Wow. Michael, so much to talk to you about. Let's start with defence, shall we?
Yep.
You know what's coming, because I try and do this job honestly. Spend now on defence or we will pay a cost in blood, says former NATO Chief General Sir Richard Sharif. He's right, isn't he?
Yes, we do need to spend more on defence. The risks that the country faces, not just from Russia, but also from bad actors elsewhere, is clear and present. Most recently, we've had the Jewish community targeted by groups which are backed by Iran, which, of course, is currently in a conflict with Israel and America. We also know that there are other bad actors out there, and we also know that Britain's defence needs an upgrade. We had a strategic defence review last year in which 3 very distinguished figures made it clear some of the things that need to change.
Starmer under pressure to not just hold a review but actually, you know, do something about finding the money. Can't touch the welfare benefits bill that's gone through the roof for fear of upsetting the Parliamentary Labour Party. I know that hindsight's a great thing in politics, Michael, but starting with Cameron for 14 years, Cold War, you're going to tell me, but do you think now too many cuts by your party in government were made to defence in hindsight? I know hindsight's easy, but let's be honest, it was an easy cut at the time, wasn't it?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
Would have done it differently?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there was a recognition later during the Conservative years that the world was becoming progressively more dangerous, particularly after the Ukraine conflict. And Boris Johnson and Ben Wallace made sure that we were foursquare behind Ukraine. And we also saw under Boris and then under Rishi Sunak an increase in defence spending.
Yeah.
But there is still more to do. And you are right that in earlier years, it was all too easy at a time, to be fair, when there was a lot of pressure on public spending, to recognise that defence might not be the priority that it should have been.
Let's talk about Henry Novak if we can. I know you've had a lot to say. This is a story that I just can't let go because I think it's unbelievably appalling. This weekend we've had our Deputy Prime Minister, who I don't mind saying proves to me that I can achieve anything in life, getting slightly upset with J.D. Vance and telling him not just about not to talk about migration, but basically to keep his nose out of British politics, and that, you know, when you're in government, what did he say? It's more difficult than when you're on the backbench and you're free to reflect. Again, I just think that's gaslighting. But here's the essence. It was put to him by Trevor Phillips, and listen, he won't come on here. 6 years ago, Michael Gove, everybody took the knee within 5 seconds of George Floyd, a career criminal, being killed. In callous circumstances, I accept that, and quite rightly those policemen faced justice. The Henry Novak thing, in many people's minds, is an absolute example of two-tier policing in this country, and yet we have a government that won't acknowledge this, doesn't want anybody else to be talking about it, but we're very quick to take the knee, having a minute's silence in the House of Commons 6 years ago. Nothing's happened in that sphere for Henry Novak yet. I think it's disgraceful. I really do.
You make a number of very good points. I don't think you took the knee, Jeremy. I certainly didn't.
No, I didn't. But yeah, what I'm saying is everywhere. Everybody took, bloody footballers, actors, politicians. He said it himself. Horror across the globe. Well, did that incite violence? I don't think so. Feeling horror, it just annoys me. It's two-tier.
Well, the first thing is, you're right. I mean, it's an historic crime, but the killing of George Floyd was horrific. But the reaction was, you know, a very, very odd thing in the UK, because it was about American police brutality, not about police brutality in the UK. And ever since the Macpherson report, I think that the idea that our police are institutionally racist and that we need to have a sort of revolution to make them more sensitive to these issues, not at all. In fact, as you point out, one of the dangers, and the Henry Novak case crystallizes this, is that the police leadership have been putting in place race action plans and other initiatives, well-intentioned, but what they've done is that they've had the effect of ensuring that the police in certain circumstances are more worried about being thought racist than they are about policing without fear or favour. And I think that Kemi Badenoch made a very good point in the Sunday Times yesterday when she said that we shouldn't blame the individual officers. They're going to make mistakes, of course, under pressure at the scene of a crime. What we should hold responsible, who we should hold responsible, are those who have been leading police forces, who've put in place policies that mean that ordinary coppers are terrified about doing their job wrongly for fear of being accused of racism.
I'm completely with you, and I would only add the caveat. I mean, I completely get from the top, and if you go into any situation handcuffed by an ideology and fear of your job or feeding your family, but there was also gross incompetence. It doesn't matter about the colour of anybody's skin. If somebody's saying, I'm stabbed, you have an absolute duty to at least check that out. And I think what's really crystallised in people's minds is that, and I think it sort of speaks to a bigger issue, Michael, which is that there was undoubted racism in the police in the 70s, 60s and 70s, and it was something that needed to be looked at. But we seem in almost every aspect of our lives to have gone so far in the opposite direction. I mean, I'm old enough to remember you couldn't mention immigration 10 years ago without being racist. I had the boss of the biggest TV network in the land say to me the other day, we've got to a point, Jez, where if you're 25, 23, you come out of university with a first-class degree in journalism, if you're a middle-class white boy or girl, you've got very little chance, and certainly less chance than you had 20 years ago. And so it seems to have gone to the extreme that box ticking is more important, and I think that's really dangerous, because I think the silent majority, that word I use every morning, are sick to death of what they see as increasing unfairness.
Yes, I think that's very fair. I think that you're absolutely right that we had racism and prejudice in the past, and you know there are still people out there in this country who've got all sorts of horrific views about people with different skin colours.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you're also right that what was initially a necessary intervention, a necessary correction to some horrific acts in the past, has now become a sort of ideology whereby it's assumed that no organisation can be truly fair unless it accurately represents, down to the last percentage point, the broader mix of our society. And that means that rather than genuine fairness and merit, you have this new concept called equity. And what that means is positive discrimination. And as you quite rightly point out, the victims of that are often working class kids who don't happen to tick any of these boxes.
There was a story on the front of the Express today, Michael, which also got me going, and the viewers. Britain won't send us back, boast criminals. Great piece of work by Zach Garnett-Perkis, investigative editor at the Express, who was in a migration camp and said several people, but on the outskirts of Dunkirk, an Iranian man told an undercover reporter that he was coming to Britain to commit violent crimes because he knew if he came up with a good excuse, he'd be able to be kept in England and wouldn't be sent back home. It strikes me that for all sorts of reasons, we have massive bloody problems, don't we, my friend?
No, you're right. And you and others on Talk have highlighted this problem. There's a whole cat's cradle. There's a web of laws that have been built up over time that mean that it's become difficult for us to police our borders effectively and to deport people who shouldn't be here. And again, to be fair, there are a number of politicians who have pointed out what needs to change, some pretty significant changes to things like the human rights in order to make sure that we are a
country who live their lives correctly and pay their bills.
Again, I think you hit a number of nails very squarely on the head. If we just think back a couple of years, we had a scheme, the Homes for Ukraine scheme, where we invited people from that country in the middle of a war to come here, and British citizens opened up their homes. And the actual majority of people who came were women and children. And I think that most people in this country would think that scheme reflected Britain at its best. There's a world of difference between that, welcoming people from a war-torn zone, welcoming in particular the vulnerable, and not being able to police 33 miles of channel. We can send a man to the moon. We can split the atom. We've been able to do that for decades. It must be possible to prevent dinghies crossing 33 miles.
So you're the right person to ask, because it frustrates me so much. I'm sick of hearing sound bites, slash the boats, do this, smash the gangs, do this. Why have a succession of politicians, including your party, and I'm not aiming this directly at you, seemingly being incapable of, as you said, policing 33 miles of bloody coastline?
Well, I think that towards the end of the Conservative time in government, Rishi Sunak had highlighted some of the things that needed to be done. They should have been done earlier, but making sure that we got out of any of the human rights conventions that prevented us from dealing effectively with the problem was one thing, and also having a deterrent, making sure that if people do actually make it here, that we can send them on to a third country. In Rishi's case, he'd identified Rwanda. We had a deal with that country. The election occurred before we were able to put people back, and there's understandable disappointment and anger about that. But the tools are there. It's not the simplest thing legislatively to do, but it can be done with a will, and it must be.
Not the simplest thing to do, but this government has the biggest post-war majority in political history. They did it about British Steel in 24 hours. I just don't understand why there isn't. I mean, maybe I missed the point. Maybe I make politics sound too simplistic. Last week, Farage was slaughtered. Did you see the MPs behind him having a go at him for daring to say it was two-tier policing? I don't think those MPs and the people who say, I'd like to, but I can't, understand the frustration in the country, Michael. I really don't. I think the silent majority want to be, and are being heard, actually.
Well, I think you make two very good points there. I mean, I think the first thing is I don't think Nigel Farage was particularly upset that some Lib Dems were annoyed by what he was saying. It's meat and drink to him.
Did you hear, by the way, what the he wouldn't tell me the name, did you? He came on the show and he said that as he sat there, there were a cacophony of screams and whatever, and as he got up to leave, an ageing Tory MP leant over and went, "Well, dear boy, it looks like you've lost the House and won the bloody country." Which I thought was quite a good line.
I think from Nigel Farage's point of view, he's far less worried about what Lib Dem or other MPs say, and far more concerned, you're right, about the message that resonates in the country. Totally spot on. More broadly, I think that you have some people in the government, I would argue that people like Shabana Mahmood and Mike Tapp actually do take the issue seriously. I mean, they haven't made the difference that they'd want to, but the overwhelming majority of Labour MPs are tied to and attached to a set of laws and an approach towards migration that means that they are unwilling to take steps that their constituents want them to take.
Yeah, which I think is really sad. Can I just, we'll obviously, broadcasting, we have rules when there's a by-election, we'll play the list of candidates. I'm interested on an opinion that was given to me earlier on from your point of view about Burnham. I'm not talking about the specific thing, but let's just say he is elected. He's made no secret, Michael, of the fact that he wants to run to replace Keir Starmer. I've been quite loud on this for a long time. I don't believe an MP can defect without a by-election, sorry. I don't believe, and it happened to the Tories twice, people will disagree with me. Yeah. I'm not sure you can turn round and rule this country for 3 years as Prime Minister if you haven't gone before the people and got yourself a mandate on a manifesto you put before the British people. And I actually think that if he wins, there will be a cacophony of noise to call a general election. I'm not saying it'll happen, but again, silent majority will have that frustration. Do you agree with me?
Yes, I think lots of people will want a general election. I think it's not a cliche. I think it is true that the British people are fundamentally fair-minded. I think when a new Prime Minister comes in like this, the British people are prepared to give them a little bit of time to find their feet, to establish their agenda, to set out what it is that they want to do. And then, if it's a radical departure from what's gone before, people say, OK, then, let us decide whether or not this is the right way forward. So there will be a clamour for an election, but lots of Labour MPs, looking at their majorities, will think, the last thing that we want is an election now. There are 2 more years, at least, sitting in the House of Commons, where, I can continue to do this job and draw this salary. And then all sorts of things can happen in those 2 years, which might shift the ground in our favour. I don't know what they would be, you know, but still. So I don't think that the Parliamentary Labour Party would want a general election. Andy Burnham has damped down talk of a general election. But you are right that people will say, well, fair play, you won this by-election, but we voted for Keir Starmer. Yes, he's been a disappointment, but give us a chance now to decide whether or not you are the real deal.
And, of course, if he doesn't win the election, the by-election, the reality is, as the backbiting and the internal civil war rages, that Starmer could actually genuinely survive.
It's possible, though I think that if Andy Burnham doesn't win the election, it'll both be obviously, curtains, well, disappointing, to put it mildly, Brent, but it will also be a terrible vote of no confidence in Labour overall. Starmer could cling on, but I think he would face, forgive me, a challenge from someone else within the Labour Party, whether that was Wes Streeting, Ed Miliband, Angela Rayner, or one of the others.
Just final question. The union boss, do you know Gary Smith from the GMB?
I do, actually. I'm quite an admirer of Gary Smith. I don't agree with him on everything.
So
but
am
he's very good on oil and gas.
Well, today, if you're just tuning in, Gary Smith, General Secretary of the GMB, has said the government's opposition to North Sea oil and gas was economic madness and disaster for working people.
He's right.
And he is right, isn't he? Utterly right.
Yeah. No. The thing about trade unions is that the world has changed since the 1980s. Well, even in the 1980s, actually, there were some good trade union leaders. You're probably too young, Jeremy, to remember folk like Bill
shut up, Gove. I'm older than you. I'm older than you, man.
I don't believe it.
Right, how old are you, Michael Gove?
I am 58.
I'm 60 years of age, Michael Gove.
I do not believe it.
Well, you're very kind. Give me a job. I'm telling you,
You
I'm
have
60.
the face and body of a younger man.
Yeah, well, I haven't moved my face for 15 years, but let's not talk about that. But it's true, 60 years of age. No, Gary Smith. I mean, literally.
No. So there are some good people, very good people in the trade union movement, and Gary Smith is one of them. As I say, I don't agree with him on everything, but he's making a very fair point here.
Just finally, before you go, has Keir Starmer ever been to your office where you're doing this interview from? Because you dreadful human being, you've got a picture of Winston Churchill behind you on the wall. I mean, that would be taken down, Gove, and you'd probably be in prison, wouldn't you, by the state militia?
It is probably an illegal act to have a picture of Winston Churchill. And do you know what's worse, Jeremy?
What?
Winston Churchill is smoking in the picture.
Oh, so my God, a smoking racist. The whole thing just beggars belief, doesn't it?
It's a hate crime icon behind me.
Yes, right, that's it, Gove. I'm sending the police round. Thank you so much indeed. It's great to have you on. The editor of Spectator, good man, Lord Michael Gove, on Tour Breakfast 9:23. I think we should be saying, oh, yes, I have to do this, the Makerfield by-election. I've been very lazy, and I recorded it last week. Dean, who's only been here 3 hours, has managed to lose it or screw up the machine. So now I'm having to do it vocally. God, your Makerfield by... Oh, is it ready? Oh, he's just found it. Take it away, Jeremy Kyle. Jake Austin stands for the Liberal Democrats. Count Binface for his own party, Count Binface Party. Andy Burnham, of course, the Labour Party. Dan Clark, the Libertarian Party. John Dyer for the Independents. Ed Gemmell, the Climate Party. Paul Gould, the Independent. Alan Howling, Lord Hope, the official monster raving loony party. Robert Kenyon, Reform UK. Robert Pownall, Protect the Wild. Rebecca Shepherd, Restore Britain. Sarah Wakefield, the Green Party. Peter Ward, Rejoin the EU. And Michael Winstanley, the Conservative Party. That's your list of candidates.
What they're looking for is £6 billion by the end of this Parliament. Some of the other things that they said they're going to cut to fund that is transport projects, key infrastructure projects. And actually, instead of that, I think you should go to the welfare bill. To your point, the working age welfare bill is going up by £40 billion between now and the end of the Parliament. I think a much better source of funds than transport, which brings growth and connectivity to our communities. If not, you will see some of these crucial areas be squeezed in order to fund what is undeniably a priority now, defence spending.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Thank you to Michael Gove. Interesting interview there. Interesting. Now, let's say a very good morning to Rob. Hello, Rob.
Good morning, Jez. You know, since we've learned how this fantastic young gentleman lost his life, the way it happened, the way the police seem to be involved into turning into something it wasn't. Shame on them forever and a day because of their behaviour and the way they've acted since. But since we've had a chance to look at the way the other political parties, in particular the Labour Party, the way that they've attacked Nigel Farage and the way that they've gone after the only words that made any sense in the whole nonsense of it all, the only person who was prepared to say it as it was. And then for all to be able to look back at the George Floyd incident and the complete unsavoury character that he was, didn't deserve to die like that. It was truly terrible. You know, Lammy's become a fool, a little bit like Diane Abbott. Our words were wrong often and regular. Let the nation see, because we all know what we're looking at here. I don't want there to be any trouble from anybody, but we need to get on our feet as English people, fly our flag, be proud of who we are, fight the fights ahead to make it better for our children. God bless everyone.
0344 499 1000, text to 87 to say a very good morning to the former political editor of The Sun. He'll tell me how I did with Gove. Trevor Kavanagh, good morning.
Good morning, Jeremy. That was a great interview.
Trev, I want to put this to you because do you know Gary Smith from the GMB Union?
Well, I know of him. I've never met him, no.
Well, this was him. I finally got the clip. Sharing it with you, TK. This was Gary Smith, the General Secretary of a union that pays money, is affiliated to Labour. This was him on Times Radio across the weekend. Have a listen, have a watch.
Sacking thousands of workers who currently work in the North Sea is economic madness. And it doesn't just impact Aberdeen, where Labour's policies, by the way, the impact they're having is shameful. It's more akin to Thatcher and what she did to Middlesbrough in the 1980s. What Labour is doing with the current energy policy is bad for jobs, it's bad for investment, it makes no sense in terms of national security. It's undermining the security of this nation, and it is driving people into the hands of reform. Many workers, they don't see all these empty promises about tens of thousands of green jobs. They don't see it as hope and opportunity. They see it as a threat. They see in the real world, energy bills for industry going up and jobs being lost.
I've nearly fallen off my seat, Trevor. That is absolute common sense from the leader of one of Great Britain's biggest unions, who is basically saying what you and I and millions of other people have known for ages, which is that net zero is a ridiculous ideology that's going to cost billions of pounds and bankrupt completely a country that's about to go on its bended knee to the IMF anyway.
Yes, it's very rare but incredibly refreshing to hear sensible people on the left of politics actually telling it as it is, and as millions of voters who are desperately fed up with this government and its posturing, how it really is in this world of high unemployment in this country and a desperate challenge for all school leavers, and indeed for those who actually have jobs already, including the workers in the North Sea oil industry. So, you know, it really resonates when someone like the trade union leaders begin to speak out.
And isn't it shocking to think that actually affiliation, yes, they provide money. Blair, of course, I saw this, I don't know if you saw that sort of essay that Tony Blair wrote a couple of weeks ago, 5,500 words. There was a poll at the weekend, just imagine how unpopular this government is. There was a poll at the weekend, Trevor, that said that 39% of those asked would prefer Tony Blair to be the new Prime Minister in place of Burnham and Keir Starmer. I mean, extraordinary. Bringing it to this government. God, I've been waited all morning since I got up at 2 a.m. for your response to this. How would you describe David Lammy, mate?
I watched him on 2 broadcasts yesterday, and I just put my head in my hands in despair. I mean, this is the Deputy Prime Minister of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. He can barely put 2 words together and make sense with them. He is denying the truth in a way which is infuriating. I mean, when you finish putting your head in your hands, you want to smash the television. He is the most infuriating so-called politician on the national stage today.
He said that America, our oldest ally, and J.D. Vance in particular, were wrong to get involved in a discussion surrounding Henry Novak, not right to talk about immigration, not right to make the inference that there is indeed 2-tier policing. And he said the amicable conversation ended with the pair agreeing to disagree. As Trevor Phillips and many viewers and listeners this morning have pointed out, he and his cronies and millions of others rushed to show the knee and Black Lives Matter and all that. And, you know, I understood the frustration. But we're talking about a career criminal who was killed in a callous way 5,000 miles away. And as I've put to every single politician since I started this show last Monday, why on earth, Trevor Kavanagh, have I not heard about a minute silence in the Lords and the Commons from Henry Novak? Why is it that when Nigel Farage said he felt rage, that was apparently inciting people to take to the streets, where 6 years ago, Lammy and his cohorts talked about horror and unforeseen anger? It's hypocrisy at its worst.
And I think that one clip, if you were to unearth it, would reveal that very graphically, I think, Jeremy. The protesters during the height of COVID, when everyone was restricted to their own homes, they weren't allowed to go out for a cup of coffee. And yet hundreds and hundreds of black protesters were allowed to scream in the faces of police with the applause of the Labour Party and people like David Lammy ringing in their ears. If they weren't actually spreading COVID in that particular demonstration, what were they doing? But they were allowed to get away with it for one reason only.
Do you believe there's two-tier policing in this country?
Yes, I do. And I think we've had this for quite a long time. It's only just, in fact, tragically because of the young Novak's death, that it suddenly become undeniably apparent. We've had a position where everything, it all began with woke. And in fact, I think it goes back to health and safety, where suddenly people were being trammeled by bureaucrats who were telling us what to do and what to think. And that went to woke, and then it became the racism world of George Floyd and his death. And it's gradually built to the point where human resources now puts everything in the DEI bucket first and foremost. The productivity of a company or the country comes second or third.
I got a message the other day from I wanted to tell you this story because we're old and my eyes just, when I read this. So this is a woman in an office in London who had worked with a male colleague for 15 years. They were that close that his wife and her husband, the four of them, would go away with their kids on holidays. They were that close. She came out of a changing room. This is about a year ago. I won't name the company. She was going out to the theatre or to the opera with her husband. She's got a black dress on. And her male friend said, "God, you look good, sweetheart," or something like that. An 18-year-old on work experience who'd been there 3 weeks felt so triggered on her behalf that he went to human resources and she was dragged in and he was threatened with a warning. I cannot, in any part of my brain, wonder how we are going to continue with such... I mean, it's madness, Trevor, isn't it? Utter, utter madness.
Yes, it's madness which has been going on for a long time, developing, and it's now entrenched, so that for quite a few years now, we've had a law which means that if someone perceives what they consider to be a racist act or a word, they themselves can report the alleged offender, even though the person to whom those words were directed is unaware of it, even if they didn't notice it themselves. It is in the eye of the beholder, which is not justice. This is just gossip, tittle-tattle, and neck curtain twitching.
And also, to be fair, it would be very realistic to say that that sort of law has given carte blanche to people like that vile man who's now in prison for stabbing Henry Novak to death, the opportunity to ring up the police and say, oh, there's a racism attack. And for the people who say, I mean, I've said for days that if the situation had been reversed and a white boy had stabbed, in this instance, a Sikh man, there would have been absolute outrage. I reckon that ideology has given people carte blanche to play the system, and that can't benefit anybody, Trev.
No, and of course, one of the points is that they didn't call an ambulance, having stabbed this boy 5 times with a 9-inch blade. So you're right, had this been other, if this boy had been other than white, we would have seen riots on the street of the proportions that were witnessed during the George Floyd overkill. That would have happened here in Britain, and it would have triggered waves. It would still be going on, frankly. And yet here we are, as you say, not a single tribute from the House of Commons. No one's calling for a day of protest. No one's calling for a day of or any sort of commemoration of this tragedy. It's a shocking situation when such a clean-cut young man can be stabbed to death unprovoked, and there is no evidence from the record that he said a word to the Sikh guy.
No, nothing at all.
Killer.
Nothing at all. Do you think, not making it personal, I just want to know, do you think that Farage incited violence by calling, he said, I felt white rage?
I don't think he incited violence by saying those words. I do think he could have condemned what I think was just unacceptable conduct by these brick-hurling...
Why do you think he didn't, Trevor?
I don't know. I think that there is a link, a symbiotic link, I'm afraid, between Reform and Restore and Tommy Robinson. A lot of supporters of Reform are tempted by Tommy Robinson's words, and they're thinking people. I know them. They talk to me about it, and I say, well, this is not the way we want to go. It's not good for Britain. But I think that they are people who you can't condemn your allies, so to speak. And that picture on the right of the screen now is just disgusting, and we should condemn it outright.
And actually, the pictures that we're showing, if you're listening on the radio, it's of Yobs attacking the police with bricks and bats. I mean, I'm not making any excuses for anybody. There were pictures of thousands of people shouting, well, just peacefully demonstrating that day. But of course, the press concentrate on that. That's rent-a-mob. That's the whole. That's like the idiots from Just Stop Oil. But you're right. There is a. I don't know whether there's a crossover. There's obviously Restore. There's Tommy Robinson. There's Reform. I mean, half of me thought that he was very vocal the other day because it actually said to the people who go, you're not strong enough anymore. You know, you become centrist. You want to get elected. No, I am strong, but there are parameters which I think that other people don't show. But listen, it's very interesting. Can I just pick up on one final story with you, Trevor, because this is also frightening. Front page of the Express today, dangerous criminals thrown out of EU nations for crimes are illegally crossing the channel. There's a surprise, because they've worked out that they can come here and commit a crime and they won't be sent back to their home country because of the ECHR. We're a laughing stock, buddy, a laughing stock.
Well, we're a tragedy, a walking tragedy, frankly. I mean, look, these poor people need sympathy and kindness, don't they? They are desperate because they want benefits and a roof over their heads and food and free NHS treatment. So they would be desperate, wouldn't they? So we need to welcome them with open arms and be kind.
If you are tuning in, that's Trevor Kavanagh being incredibly sarcastic, which we do appreciate enormously on the show. Trevor, great to have you on. Just one final question. Don't laugh. Nobody will have asked you this ever on Talk. Do you know what a furry is?
A furry?
Do you know what a furry is?
Is it one of those artificial sort of pets? Like
No, it's a human being that identifies as a mouse or a cat, and they have a fur, tail and whiskers, because apparently that's the way they want to be treated.
That's the inevitable conclusion, Jeremy.
There you go. Trevor Kavanagh and Jeremy Kyle will never identify as furries. Thank you, Trevor. Morning, another Jeremy.
Morning, Jezza. Tony from Stoke-on-Trent, mate. Speaking to you from my hotel balcony in Fuerteventura. Just waiting for these last few little clouds to disappear, and then I'm off down to the pool. Yesterday, I identified as a single man on holiday, having some fun, drinking a beer and, lying in the sun lounges. This morning, I think I need to identify as a furry. I'm going to go down to the pool and I'm going to crawl around on my hands and knees, sniffing people's bums and cock my leg up and just wee anywhere. Somehow, I think I won't have a hotel in the morning. These kids need to get a bloody grip, mate. Keep up the good work.
I love that. I've often thought, and there will be people in this building who will think you can't possibly say that. Well, I'm going to. I've often thought, isn't it good that we don't sort of introduce ourselves to our wives or our friends' girlfriends the same way as dogs do? Hello, Jezza, meet my wife. Sorry about that. Back in 3.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Just looking at the phone, just breaking news. I haven't got any. 18 minutes to 10 o'clock. Julia Hartley-Brewer here, of course, from 10 o'clock, Monday to Thursday. Ian Collins, is he back in the afternoons? I don't know what's... I think Ian Collins and I think Kev O'Sullivan, back from his holiday, will be here with Drive from 4 o'clock. That is your line out. And Rob Armstrong, bless him, who's a regular to the show, has just messaged me, I bet you played my voice note while I was out of the car. Yeah, we did, mate, 2 minutes ago. Sorry about that. 0344 499 1000. Keith Alderson, Jeremy, HMS Victory is actually... Oh, here we go. HMS Victory is undergoing a major refit. Can we assume it's going to be put back into service with wind power? Probably. Keith in Oswestry, great place. Joanna, good morning from Salisbury. I can't believe Labour attack welfare, but immediately go for the pensioners that are paid in for it and most that can't get a job. Reduce capital... Oh, I love Joanna. Listen to this. Reduce capable working people's benefits by 50%, but they can earn the rest by community service hours. A minimum of 25 hours a week while they look for permanent work. Cleaning up the streets, potholes, even volunteering in schools with police checks, that they are work ready. I've said it for absolutely ages. Paul Hamilton, the only navy we have are the small boats the illegals use to get here. Probably true. Nicholas in Gwent, is it? Lovely. Wonderful show. Most furries are kept in the home and neutered to stop unwanted litters. Maybe we should... Oh, we're now talking about neutering people who want to identify as furries. I no longer teach my daughter that the police will protect her. If she's in trouble, call me, says an anonymous text. I'm sort of the same. Stuart Brown, our fantastic, intelligent, patriotic police force knelt down before the lunatics from BLM who were kicking off in our streets, attacking people and vandalising our property, and completely ignored the COVID rules, if I remember. Yes. James, Geronimo, Geronimo? Is that my new... Geronimo? Wonder why we're skint. I received a letter from HMRC to say that I will soon be 80. I am... Oh, my God. This reminds me of my father-in-law. This is absolutely what happened to Rob. I received a letter recently, says James, from the HMRC to say that as I'm now 80, I may have my pension increased by 25p a week. Can't even buy the Sun for that. That's outrageous. Jez, says Steve, can people stop talking Blair up? He used a huge cash surplus left by the Tories to fund his ideology. When he'd spent it, he legged it and left it to Mr Brown. And we all bloody well know how that ended up. Yeah, he sold all the gold. Matt's in Cheltenham. Jeremy. Nigel did not say white rage, he said cold white rage. You should probably correct this as it plays into the hands of detractors of Nigel. It was deliberate. But I'm glad you noticed it. It was deliberate. I know what he said. I said what... Never mind. Stuart Brown, let's put all the furries in cages like animals with a bowl of water and some appropriate animal-linked food. That'll stop them being weird. Quite right. Quarter to 10. We're live across the United Kingdom. As ever, Alarm Clock Britain, thank you. Oh, my God, have you looked out the window? The mist's descending. It's like a scene out of I don't know what. Awful. Let's go to the lady who always finishes the show, puts a spring in my step and my hat at a jaunty angle. Ladies and gentlemen, top royal biographer and commentator, Angela Livin. Hello, Angela.
Good morning.
I make you giggle, don't I, Ange?
You do, yes.
Right. Well, now, listen, I'm not given for reading the Mirror very often. But page 2 of the Mirror today is a very interesting article which finally says, because we had all the stuff at the weekend about Beatrice and Eugenie going to Peter Phillips's wedding, and then there was the big furore over they've lived rent-free for a long time, and stuff about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor renting out property in the grounds of the place he's given for free to staff and other people for money. And, you know, we joke, but you and I would both be royalists. Transparency, greater transparency, is going to increasingly be screamed from the rooftops for. And William has admitted that he will make massive changes when he becomes king. That's welcome news, isn't it, Angela?
Yes, it is at one level. However, actually, if you look very closely at the newspaper, it's kept saying could be, might be. So I never take those for seriously, actually, because it's just, you know, putting something down. But I do think that people should actually deserve where they live. But on the other hand, if it's somebody who is close to the king, it might be... well, it'd still be our king. You've got to be able to give it to him. If he wants to do something, if he's got lots of money and he would like to give it to different people because that's what he would like to do, I don't think it's any of our business. I mean, lots of parents give their children help with buying a place or...
I know, but I think the problem is, the reason, and I am as strong, probably more so than anybody as a royalist, but the problem is because of the stories that have come out in the last few months and years about how many of them have literally had a life of Riley in return for doing bugger all and have abused their position, and I think primarily of Andrew Mountbatten Wisdom, but his daughters have been dragged into his ex-wife. I think when you look again, and I always talk about this country, about how the silent majority have woken up, Angela, I think people are struggling, and I think they look at it and go, why the hell should you have all that? Yeah, if you're out there doing work in royal job, the King, Camilla, you know, William, Kate, but if you sat on your backside, you know, daughters of the Duke of York, and you're not giving anything back, why the bloody hell should we pay, in effect, for you to have that free home?
It's not us to pay. It comes out of the King's pocket. It's not anything to do with us.
But presumably people would understand that the civil list, which is what the King and working royals' money they get from the civil list, which was voted through years and years ago, people would assume that the civil list is provided by the British taxpayer. I'm just giving you the other side of the argument.
No, it's nothing to do with this. It's his own money, the King's own money, and I think, therefore, he's allowed to do this. But people like Andrew, who sell off bits of places near where he's living and actually takes the money when he's really not paying anything, that is disgusting.
But of course it is, and I also got the feeling reading about this over the weekend, and tell me if I'm wrong, that a lot of this had been allowed to just continue with the Queen, and that Charles has been sort of given this particularly crap hand, if you like, when suddenly all the papers and Parliament are up and down saying, come on, we need to change the game plan.
Yeah.
But actually it's down to him to reshape the monarchy, really.
That's true, but it's interesting that Charles can't bear to do things that his mother wouldn't like him to do. She would.
Well, I'd agree with that, but I disagree, because he actually finally had the balls to exile Andrew, didn't he?
Yeah, well, he had to in the end, but he could have got rid of him years ago. They knew it, 6 years ago, so he should have done something then, but it must have been quite hard for him to do this now, but he has done. But it's not enough, that's the trouble.
What is enough for Andrew? I was thinking about this the other day. I mean, again, I'm talking about how the world's changed. I'm a royalist, but people will go, well, yeah, he might have lost his titles, but he's still living rent-free in a beautiful 5-bedroom house in the middle of the country with servants. He doesn't work, he gets money, and he's done those crimes, and he was best friends with the world's worst paedophile.
Well, he really should have some sort of prison, shouldn't he? He should be just locked in somewhere where he can't move out.
Couldn't agree more.
I think he's so appalling, and he hasn't cared about his family or anything at all.
Do you see his girls as innocent in this? Because I don't.
Do I think who? Sorry.
Do you see his daughters as the innocent victims in this? Because I don't.
No, I don't really. I do a bit. I did a bit.
Yeah.
I do a bit, but not really, because if the girls were 17 and 19, if you were asked to come by plane to meet a man who's just been taken out of prison because of all the women he'd been dumping, that you can
Did
say...
Did you say rumping and dumping, Levine? Did you just say rumping and dumping?
I did.
That's my favourite line of the whole morning. Rumping and dumping. No, you're right. And actually, the thing that I was trying to make the point about at the beginning was, I don't blame them in their entirety, but they're tone deaf. At least William and Kate don't appear to be tone deaf. If I was anybody close to Beatrice and Eugene, I'd go, right, listen, you probably weren't 100% sure of what was going on. Your parents aren't going to recover from this. You need to come out publicly and say, we shouldn't have anything from the royal family. We need to disappear for a bit. I just feel like that, just the way I feel.
17 and 19, no plenty, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. So now they're married, they've got their own homes. Do the right thing. Look as if you're not deaf to what your average person is going through. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Well, then Yes, but, you know, they probably weren't asked, so they didn't say anything, kept it secret. But I do think that's dreadful, and I can't like them as I have done because of what they did.
I'd love to know what the royal family genuinely, what William and Kate. I think they're in a not in a difficult position, because I think that one of the ways the monarchy will be saved is by those two. But I think he's going to have to make some decisions that a lot of people will accept, but a lot of people will feel are massively unfair. Can I not let you go before I ask you about... I don't know if you... Did you see the story about Meghan Markle at the weekend that said it was always going to end this way?
I did. The Catherine Mayer one.
Yes. I know that you're a massive fan of Meghan Markle, and given an opportunity, you always like to talk about her, Angela.
Well, I thought I didn't like this book one bit because she said she couldn't understand so at odds that Catherine and Meghan were apart. She didn't understand that. Well, I could give her 25 reasons why.
Give me three reasons why Meghan and Catherine aren't the same.
Well, I think one was the first time they asked her to come for tea, she went with torn jeans and looking a wreck. And she was cross and asked if she could have something on her lips, and she wanted to hug her and kiss her. And it was most inappropriate to go and see somebody like Catherine in that sort of way. I thought that was appalling. She's got plenty of clothes. She could have done that. And the other one was being very rude about her husband and herself. The thing is, she's a mother and she forgives. But on the other hand, I think that Meghan is so appalling that she won't want to have anything to do with her.
It's really interesting. I remember all that furore over the bridesmaids and making, you know, the young one cry and Kate cry. Kate is I don't know anybody that's had a bigger impact on the royal family in the last however many years. I think she's the future of the royal family, and I do think at the very basis of all of the Sussex's anger, and I was reading at the weekend that the Duke of Edinburgh moved away from his grandson and her. He didn't like what they'd done to the Queen in the later years of his life, and I just think that I mean, we talk about it incessantly, but I think that Kate and William must frustrate the hell out of the Sussexes, because they get it right almost every time, whether it's dress, approach, humility, normality. Everything they do, to me, smacks of what I want my monarchy to do to survive. And everything the Sussex do, led by that odious woman, makes me think you're just abusing your position to the detriment of people who really care about the monarchy as an institution. In fact, you're endangering something that so many of us will grow up to believe in.
Yeah, she wants revenge. Meghan wants revenge.
For what?
Well, she wasn't the number one. You know, she was fifth in line, and she couldn't believe it. And Harry went round and said, look, you know, you ought to let Meghan do all these things, because she was taught herself, she had jobs, whereas Catherine has never had any experience. So it should be her. Now, for him to know that, it's a special thing. It's not done just any old person comes in because Harry says it. And Meghan has never forgiven it. She's never forgotten it. And she can't bear it. And if you'd watched, you would try and jump in front of Catherine and William, because she wanted to be thought of as more important. And one aide would always drag them back. I mean, it used to make me get so angry, not with the aides, but with the fact that she had no understanding, and she just can't bear it that everyone likes her, because she can't be nice, you know.
Well, that's her done. Angela Levin, jumpy, rumpy, pumpy is the line of the morning. We thank you enormously as ever. We love you and your pearls. Thank you so much indeed, Angela Levin, royal biographer. So stand by, my friends. Thank you for listening to Breakfast. Well done, Dino, Big M, Tommy, Nehar and Dino for a second day. Back tomorrow, 6 o'clock. Stand by for Julia Hartley-Brewer. If you'd like to get your call in, 0344 499 1000. You've taken the voice note away. Oh, you've absolutely ruined me. I'll have to keep talking. So Julia Hartley-Brewer here from 10 o'clock, 0344 499 1000. Your text message as well to her show on 87222. Ian Collins is here from 1 o'clock. And of course, he's back. Apparently, it is true. He's back. He's been on holiday. He's got a tan and he's got an open neck Hawaiian shirt, what a dreadful thought. Kev O'Sullivan here from 4 o'clock this afternoon. This is me speaking slowly to furiously Pad. I'm joking. Have yourselves a fantastic Wednesday. Look at it out the window. Looks absolutely bloody dreadful. We'll see you back here tomorrow morning. Dean, you got a second day, son. Well done. Rehab for you. Stand by. Julia's next. Ta-ra.
What we saw in that body cam footage with regards to the murder of Henry Novak was not an example of the police being unfairly vilified. It is an example of two-tier policing, and I want to make this point too, that while the conduct of those officers must come under great scrutiny, clearly, the conduct of those officers is directly downstream from the code of conduct that the police are made to adhere to with zero tolerance, for deviation.